It's 9 a.m. on a beautiful Thursday morning, so we will call this meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Park Commissioners to order. And I'm President Getz, and with me is Vice President Thomas and Commissioners North and Lindner. Commissioner Castellini is not joining us this morning. She is out of town. But we do have a quorum. 4 is more than a quorum, so we will begin our meeting today. We'll start with public comments, and we just have one. Vince Scott is here to address us. And Vince, I'll apologize. I just got your letter in my packet this morning. So,
okay.
But here,
I'm not sure.
You can stand wherever you want. You've got 2 minutes to give us whatever you've got.
Well, good morning to you, Mr. Getz, fellow commissioners. I'm Vince Scott. I'm a technologist who was fortunate enough to retire his career at 43 after selling the patent at Microsoft executives, and now I'm a published fiction author. And I'm here today to support the letter which I sent, which was about renaming the Sawyer Point tennis facility for Gary Lesses, who is, I'm sure you know quite well, spent a lot of time and effort on redevelopment of that facility. And there's a group of us, 65 or so, who are all willing to throw off this balcony to pacify sort of naming rights for somebody. So, hey.
Super. Well, as I said, we just got this today. What I'm going to do is ask that Steve, I'm going to pass this along to you. And if you could, we do have established protocol as far as this process. And I cannot tell you what that is off the top of my head, but I'm going to refer this to Steve and ask him to give us a report back as far as the process we go through to address requests like this. We completely understood. Yeah. We understand your motivation and we understand why that might, exactly. So we will, hate to say, but we will follow up with it. We can't take action today, but we will follow up on your request.
Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Vince. Yes. And we have Jack. Jack, I can't read it. Is it Wasson?
Oh, Martin.
Jack.
I can wait. I don't know if you're going to present your letter or not.
Yeah.
I'll wait until to speak to Bellevue Hill Park.
Okay. That's perfect. Great. That was our last public announcement. I will just make a note for the record that we have received written comments this month from the public regarding the Armletter Spray Park down at Sawyer Point. And we have received letters pro and con on the Burnett Woods Dog Park. Those were the only comments received in addition to the letter we received today from Jack regarding the Sawyer Point pickleball. I'm sorry, Vince, on the Sawyer Point pickleball courts. Before we go into our introductions, I just want to make a comment. I'm extremely pleased to announce at our regular meeting here that the Board of Park Commissioners has a new executive director of parks that will start with us on September the 4th. Jason Barron has been offered and accepted our offer to be the next director of Cincinnati Parks. We're extremely excited about having Jason join us in September. I want to publicly thank again the search committee led by Commissioner North for this process. It is probably the most important process that the park board goes through, and that is to select and appoint a director. So thank you for all your hard work. And I also want to mention, besides my colleagues, the rest of the commissioners who were on that search committee, both Dan Vogelpohl and Brian Tiffany from the foundation. And then also thanks to Jenny Mobley and Joel Gross and Lamont Hill from the staff who helped us in that process. And as I said, we're thrilled and looking forward to Jason being on board. We're also very, very fortunate to have Director Steve Pasilla that will continue with us on an interim basis as part of the transition process that we put in place earlier this year. And Steve will be with us at least through the end of the year. So we're really thrilled to be able to have that and to provide transition support to Jason as he comes on board. With that, I will turn it over to Derek, who's got some.
Excuse me,
Sure.
Mr. President. Just one correction on the start date,
Yes.
September 6th versus September 4th.
Okay, it's a 6th.
Right.
On the 5th and the 4th.
He's on
is
the
a Sunday.
payroll as of the start of the pay period, which is the 4th.
Okay.
His actual
That's-
first day of reporting will be Tuesday the 6th.
So it's first day's a vacation day. huh?
His
Exactly.
first day is a holiday.
I told you we hired a smart guy.
Okay, Derek, I'm going to turn it over to you now for some introductions.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I would like to announce 3 new hires that we have. We have Stephen Cloud.
Hi.
Morning.
Hi, Stephen.
You kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Stephen Cloud. I'm the new journeyman carpenter here with Parks. So it's good to be part of the team and getting acclimated to everything, and learning my way around. So
What does a journeyman carpenter do?
I went through a union apprenticeship when I was younger, similar to Paul, the current journeyman carpenter. And so we fix all the wood structures within the park and trails, doors, lock sets, amongst several other different things. So yeah.
Great, welcome.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Thank you, Derek.
We also have Kevin Belton.
Hello, everybody. Kevin Felty, journeyman plumber like Steve. Started apprenticeship school back in like 94. And previous to this, I've had 23 years at the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority. I'm so thankful to be here. This is a beautiful job. So far this week, crash course on learning how to work on the drinking fountains and water features and things. Really a learning experience. Looking forward to it.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Brandon Bob.
Morning,
Good
Brandon.
morning.
Good morning.
Brandon Water, retired, Top Park. I work off park, French start, just go around cutting the weed whacking. I'm honored to be a new hire. I was actually anxious for this. So, yeah, I appreciate it. And glad to be here.
Brandon, thank you.
Welcome.
This is one of the employees that starts off part-time and then transitions to full-time employment. So we're happy to have him.
Oh, great.
Tell your colleagues, thank you for us, especially in weather conditions like we have now, to be out working and keeping the parks looking as good as you do. Thank you. And welcome full time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll have a lot more full-time employees coming down. Like Jimmy and I are working on assessing each division from the need base and also structurally to see what other needs they may have. So that may drive more full-time action.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Derek. Okay. First thing we will do is address the minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes. The first is from our previous regular monthly meeting on June 16th, and we had 3 special meetings regarding the interviewing and hiring of our new director. Those meetings were June 24th, June 28th, and July 12th. Does anybody have any corrections, adjustments to any of these sets of minutes?
I just have a couple of things. Some things are cosmetic, and I apologize for not getting these in sooner, but I just had a chance to get caught up and read them. Just have a question on the June 16th meeting minutes under the action items, Hollister property sale. And it says that Mr. Sherman should be, without the S, presented that the park board sold the Hollister Recreation Center. Was that actually sold by the city? Is that a technicality? or-
Yes, we sold it. It was property controlled by the park board that we did sell.
We did sell.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great, thank you. And the others are cosmetic, and I'll just pass on to Tia.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other changes, questions? Do I have a motion then to accept all 4 sets?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Linder. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Those are passed. I'm going to change the order for our action items. We have some visitors with us here today regarding Lytle Park. So Steve, if you want to introduce this topic, we will address this before our other action items.
President. So we've been working to try to finalize the Lytle project. I know it's been going on for several years. We're in a position now, we're waiting to finish the project. We do have some funding gap, and we've been working with our partners, Eagle Realty, things like this summer. We had a meeting on July 19th. We presented information on that gap. We also included Michael Bruce, who has been awarded the contract to do work. The purpose of that meeting really is to determine really why the cost differential between the original bid in 2019 to understanding the cost of the current bid today. So that meeting took place on July 19th. With us today is Paul Stiller, who is the president of Eagle Realty, and also Charlotte Thomas, who is the senior vice president. They're here in the audience today. So we have a funding gap of around $710,000. I think you have each have a sheet in the packet. And one of the things that came out of that meeting was the request to reconsider the Parks Board of Cincinnati's contribution to the project, to see if there would be any, that conversation to be entertained, to see if we would be willing to contribute more to the project. You can see the current breakdown of what each party is contributing. I think we initially obligated $200,000 to the project. You can see, I don't think you have the original bid price on there, but that was closer to Joel, we reckoned about 2.6, and now we're at 4.
Yeah, that's correct.
So quite a bit of lead. Mr. Cruz was able to provide some high-level overview summary of where those cost differentials really were most impactful. But I think it's just the common things that we're seeing in all of our projects, which is labor costs, material costs, and actually getting access to materials. So the conversation today that we're entertaining, or asking to entertain, is there an appetite to contribute more to this project?
And a couple questions. So the 4.3 million first line item on this schedule, that is the current bid from Prus, and that already has deducted from it these two items at the bottom, the pavers and the DOTE bump out?
Correct. Those are two items that came out of our conversations on the 19th that could possibly be value engineered to the project to reduce the gap.
Okay, so total project that we're looking at for redeveloping that park is now almost 4.7 million. Western and Southern has already contributed. We've had almost 1.6 million in our bank for the past couple years. The 1.083 was agreed to with Western and Southern earlier this year when we had an estimate for the cost of redoing the park. You can see that we received the 1.1 million that was from the state of Ohio for remediation after tearing up our park to redo the Lytle Tunnel. Park Board, we have previously committed $200,000. So as we see here, there is a funding need of $700,000. And I'll open it up for discussion. Western and Southern has asked us if we would consider something above the 200 that we've already committed to help bridge the $700,000 gap.
Question from me is, what was the original cost, 2.6?
I believe so, Brad. It was bid in 2019 or late 2018.
Okay.
I think the original base bid for Cruise came back somewhere around 2.6 million.
So the point I just like to make in public for the record is what that tree's cost us, $2 million for the tree. Let that sink in. There's no added scope to this. In fact, we're taking scope out of it. I would think maybe, what's her name, Kathleen Bergman, maybe should step up and contribute a little bit in her legal fund or her legal team to close some of this gap. I think, to me, that's just disappointing. That, this is coming out of the public or coming out of somebody, but not coming out of her.
And you're correct to identify that the sole reason for the delay was the legal actions that were taken against the board at that time.
Does this increase cost include the cost of moving that tree? Because we're still, it does.
Yes, I think that's roughly $165,000.
Correct, that's right, that is an alternate, Commissioner, that we can't take out without having a rebid. It's, you know, a critical path item to the.
Oh,
project.
sure.
It has to be included under litigation, so
Un-
it's not an alternate that we can remove. It is included, yes.
I understand that we have to do it. I just wanted to know if it was that an additional, but it's in the 700.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Where would, if we approve funding for this, from what source is it recommended? Is this the commissioner's fund?
I'll recommend the capital improvement fund of 752. That
Okay.
comes from the sale or leasing of property and it goes into that fund. We have roughly, we just received 1.5 million from the Hollister, which is for Mount Auburn, but before that, we have around $2 million in there.
Today, we've got $3 million sitting in 752, which is a fund typically when we sell properties. That's where it comes from. Scope, Steve, what are we looking at? Are we looking at another $100,000? What are we?
I don't think we talked about any, we didn't discuss any amounts, but I think, maybe that's a good starting point perhaps, or at least a landing spot. I don't know, that would be the discretion of the board. Western Southern does not identify any particular amount.
Who holds the contract for the improvement of this park? We do?
We do.
Right,
We
so if we choose not to pony up to 700, then we're effectively asking a private resource to contribute.
That's correct.
And being presumptive here that they actually would.
That's correct. Today, Western and Southern has, as part of the litigation on this park, has agreed to work with us in bridging the gap of any additional costs incurred due to the delay in litigation, which is now the 2.6 delta. They've already signed, based on our initial estimates, they've already signed and agreed to $1,083,000. So if with the 700,000, basically it's got to either come from us or come from Western and Southern, or we have to find another third party to actually execute the plan that's been designed. And as you saw here, things like the pavers already have come out of the original plan that we made.
There is also, and Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a $300,000 contingency line on the project. So obviously we can hold that true to the project, and maybe that gap shrinks a little, but at this point, we really don't have that.
That's correct. 300,000 is for a project of this magnitude. We felt that that was necessary to hold something, because if we get into construction and have to get a change order of any size or significance, it'll just completely stop, and we have to go recertify funds for that. They gave us a leeway of what we could ask there. The minimum was probably $50,000 for a project this size on a year-long construction. It was not recommended to go that low. You may not have to spend the money, but it is included there.
For me personally, I think I totally agree with Commissioner Lindner. And I would say that it's extremely unfortunate that we're looking at a $2 million delta, a park that could have been finished by now at least $1 to $2 million less of funding requirements. I don't like having to pay more money because of that, but we are where we are. This park needs to go forward. I think at the end of the day, when we look at what we will have there as a $4.7 million park, that I think will be beautiful. I think we all like the design, the plans, and it'll be a great addition to the east side of our downtown area. I would be inclined to agree to pony up a little more than the 200,000 that we have. The dollar amount, I think, is all that I sort of want to get a consensus on what we would be willing to do.
How much did you say was in the contingency?
300.
300,000. So what if we proposed an increase in the contribution, but any contingency savings would be shared back to Western and Southern for their additional contribution?
I think that's appropriate.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
And I concur with you. I think we need to pony up something.
Oh, yeah.
These guys have been I think a very good partner and it's stepping up time and time again. And I don't think all of the burden should fall on these guys to make this happen.
I do want to remind us as well that Western and Southern also has agreed to continue what they've done for the past X number of decades. How much per month?
40,000 per year.
40,000 per year, they will contribute every year towards the maintenance of this park, in addition to what they are committing here for the capital costs. I will then recommend that we add an additional $100,000. Does anybody? I hear too.
Well, at least go with 50, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't think that it's their responsibility. Yes, it certainly benefits the campus around Western and Southern, but this is a very public park. It's a gem of downtown. It's for public use, and to expect them to come up with any delta and change it because we were involved in litigation for 2 years, I just don't think it's reasonable.
Then I'll make an official motion for $200,000
Yes.
with the understanding that if there is savings that remains out of the contingency, that would go to Western and Southern's benefit.
We can certainly do that, Commissioner, if that's what you want. I think as long as that's sufficient with purchasing, I'm not sure if there's any documentation we have to be there to ensure that when it comes back to adjust the agreement, I'm not sure there, but yes, I think it's possible.
Okay, well, let's figure out the technique. It may be that Western and Southern withholds a final payment or something. I'll leave that.
What will occur in that situation, commissioners, is we will sunset the project and move the money back into it'll be 5430 or 1752 then check.
Okay. So I will make that motion, 200 West Southern. And I will also add to that motion that we draft a press release. And I think in that press release, I want to be clear that Park Board is moving forward on a project that's been delayed, and unfortunately, due to litigation, the cost of this is now significantly higher. I would put the dollar amount, but I would like to get a story out saying that the Park Board has agreed to meet some funding shortfalls, but point out that Western and Southern will be contributing close to $3 million, it looks like now on this project. I'll leave all the wording to you guys, but I do think that we should put out just announcing that we want to move forward, but giving the recognition to Western and Southern and identifying the reason why we have the shortfall. So
I'm not a poet or a published author, but I'll suggest a title is The Most Expensive Tree in Cincinnati History.
It's a good hook. So that is a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner, Vice President. Any other discussion on this? Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And thank you to our friends from Western and Southern. Appreciate you standing with us over this period of time and for your extreme dedication to Cincinnati and your contribution to the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know it's hard to leave, but
Yeah. Okay, now we'll move into our items as on the agenda. The first is the Commissioners Fund budget for my favorite topics of all time, budgets. Craig, we'll turn it over to you.
Morning, Commissioner, and be here for a while, it looks like, so take a seat.
Thank you.
Thought I was pretty loud talking.
No, get the hot mic.
Okay. Well, it's that time of year. It's the Commissioners Fund budget approval time, and just want to go through a recap of what occurred last year in the fiscal year 2022. Last year, the commissioners did a wonderful job of identifying projects, capital needs that could be utilized with the Commissioners Fund. We'll take a step back and look at our revenue from last year. In the fiscal 22, the Commissioners Fund received $799,565 in revenue from like the gift shop, distributions from endowments, and donations. And donations are with the grants. And these came from the Parks Foundation, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and other sources. Disbursement of parks endowments that we control occurred in June of 2021. So they weren't included in the fiscal 22 income coming in. And the total disbursements from the endowments in June of 2021 was $627,000. And below there is a breakout of each of the distribution amounts or donations received from separate entities. In fiscal 2022, the commissioners committed $1.3 million to capital spend. And below that provides a breakout of those capital spend items. Additionally, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in page, it says 11.
Okay.
Are ready to turn the page.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ready to turn the page. Additionally, park staff committed to spend $2,250,000. That does include $143,000 from fiscal 21 that was paid in fiscal 2022. So Fund 430 is an unappropriated account, so invoices will come out the next fiscal year and not be tied back, kind of what you see in other industries that do an accrual and then it washes out, but not with that account. And that leads, and we will be going through the attachments as well. And that leads to the fiscal 23 recommended budget. The following represents a summary of the staff recommended budget of $1,832,495. In fiscal year 23, the budget, this is $278,000 less than fiscal year 22 adjusted budget. And then below there shows the amounts from fiscal year 22, the fiscal year 22 adjusted budget, and the fiscal year 23. Key items of decreases include decreases due to run rate, as well as the removal of projects that are winding down, especially the Burnett Woods. The invasive species removal reduced by $113,000. Additionally, we have an increase for the Eden Park Tom Jones Commons. This is for maintenance of Tom Jones Commons. We're gonna contract that out so it can be maintained for the next fiscal year. Our projected ending balances, you can see we started at the ending balance of June 30th of 2022 of nearly $5 million, with the projected revenue of $1,056,000 and projected expenses of $1.8 million. We're projecting an ending balance of $4,219,000. This does not include any capital spends at this time. I'm going to be meeting with Joel and planning design team to identify their opportunities for capital spend. If there's identified opportunities for capital spend, we'll be coming back to the commissioners for that approval. For each of the attachments, attachments A, which is on 14, that identifies where the revenue came from in fiscal year 2022 and where the revenue, donations, and distributions are coming for fiscal year 23. You will see some distributions of our endowments. The distribution of our endowments are required because these are private foundations. So it's a requirement of 5% distribution. The other endowments that we control, you'll see there is no distribution request. Because of our ending balances in our funds, the investment committee came to the recommendation that there's really no purpose to go have a distribution in those funds.
If I could interrupt 1 second, I'll make a comment here to emphasize what Craig just said.
you'll see in the middle column there, projected revenue for fiscal year '23. You can see the very first line item there is Bettman operating, which in prior year, we received 229,600 distribution. I'm on page 15, if you're on the same page as me. That column where it's got projected revenue, you'll see that we have 585,000 coming out of the endowment funds. The investment committee did go through Craig's budgeting and also reviewed our endowments. Our policy as a park board is we can take up to 5% distribution from our endowment funds. Last year and the year before that, I believe we took 2% distribution from those funds. This year, as we looked at funds available already sitting in the Commissioner's Fund balance, and we'll actually talk about a little bit later the funds that we're talking about moving from PNC over to the city. There are funds sitting there that we don't even anticipate spending this year. So the investment committee said, rather than distributing anything from our endowment funds, let them ride at this point in time, budget for receiving zero out of them. So this reflects that those that we do not have to take a distribution fund from because they are not considered public endowments, or public foundations, we have said we'll take nothing out of them for now. If for some reason we get into the year and we say, hey, there's this great project that we need funds for, we can always go back and tap into those funds to take distributions. But we are recommending that because of, number one, the market position today, rather than selling and distributing, let it ride for now. We've got funds available already in the Commissioner's Fund, so we're recommending taking nothing out of it for now. Clear?
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
Sorry, Greg.
Yeah, I understand that decision and recommendation, and I agree with that. The question, you mentioned that part of the reason, in addition to the current state of the market, was the fact that we had money in the PNC account that we had not spent yet. There are projects that we have. Is it a matter of capacity that has not allowed us to spend any more of that? And do we anticipate that we will be able to do more of that?
I will answer, but then let the expert. It's my opinion that yes, it's been a matter of capacity. Those funds have built up. The reason why there was at one point there was 7 million sitting in the Commissioner's Fund. That was an accumulation of distributed, unspent endowment distributions. I think what we've seen since Joel's been in that seat, and I think what we're going to see a little bit later today, I have full confidence, and you can see already this year, we spent down, I think for the first time in a number of years, we spent down the Commissioner's Fund. I know the big chunk of that was for $700,000 that we approved for new equipment, but it's the first time that we've actually started whittling away with that. I think we've all been clear with Joel that with his capacity, we do have plenty of projects to do. And I think that my anticipation is we will continue to spend down that endowment fund, Commissioner's Fund. Agree with that?
Yes, sir. That's the plan.
Cool, right?
Wonderful. We'll move on. I'm going to skip to page, it should be 26. This provides a breakdown of the all funds budget summary. This looks at each of the expense line items and details out the adjustments that are occurring there. You'll see the increase is primarily going to be driven by salaries and benefits, cost of living adjustments. But there are some decreases in there as well.
Which page do you want?
I'm on page 26, attachment D.
My page 26 is the adjustments.
There was a updated board report sent out. Yeah. And the primary driver there was the salary and benefits adjustments and some reductions due to the city adjusting their run rates for their auto and fleet and fuel, and then us also adjusting our run rates, as well as projects winding down. For example, professional services, the Burnett Woods, the basic species removal was primary driver of that. And
I think this points out as well, you can see, and it's, we all know this, when you add salaries and benefits, we're well over 50% of our whole budget goes to salaries alone. The other thing I want to emphasize on this schedule is this is an all funds budget. So we'll hit on this topic a little bit later when we talk about moving the P&C funds. But this is a combined all funds, including cities allocated funds, as well as the budget that Craig is presenting to us. So this is a look at all in, all funds, budget expense for parks.
So would that include grants, things like that?
Yeah, I think if you look at the next page, and Craig, I'm sorry to move forward, but if you look at the very next page, and I don't know where it's the one just before Steve's memo. It says at the top, annual summary, and it's got budget of full year 22 and then 23. This is an excellent schedule that Craig has put together. You can see at the top where it's all city, all funds. You can see that's the $21 million that is part of the city budgeting process. It's little number 27.
Attachment E, up in the right corner.
Yeah, attachment E. So this shows at the top, this is the money coming from the city, all city funds, 21.153 and 22. And then the budget for this year is the 21,816. And then below that, it starts showing the other different pieces. So the Park Commissioners Fund that Craig is proposing today at $1.5 million. And then grants anticipated from the foundation, Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and then just some miscellaneous revenue brings us up combined, all city funds available for parks expenses and operations of 23.6 million for 2023. That number there, the 23,649,000, is what Craig has shown us on the page before that. Total expenses for the park board, 23,649. Operating expenses.
Craig, this is concerning in that we've got decreases across all categories, most all categories, except for salaries and benefits. Yet inflation is through the roof, fuel is a lot more, repairs are a lot, everything we're doing is a lot more. This means we're gonna have funds to do a lot less.
In accordance with I was surprised with the city's adjustments with the auto and the fuel. That was surprising that they decreased those, and that's something that they drive.
We're gonna run less miles than this.
And our cost did come in significantly lower this year than what was budgeted in fiscal year 22.
So if you compare this 2023 budget to actuals, we have a bigger perspective.
Yes, with the 22, because you would
I
see.
always think that's important, not to compare this year's budget to last year's budget, this upcoming budget to what we actually did last year.
Mhm.
It doesn't give us the perspective. So if we looked at the forecast, that's maybe you've gotten 2022 close yet,
That, it should be closed soon. Usually they don't close it till about the middle of the month. We're in about the middle of the month, so it should be closed any day. And they are still inputting information from fiscal year 22.
So this is non-salary total, but it's total including salaries, right?
That is correct.
What would we see that number as for 2022 actions?
I can run that report. I would recommend waiting till the books close, but it should be, I can run that.
Jim, we have something in here.
It should be, yes.
We
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can-
do. There is, for example, in 050, the general fund, I know actual was $200,000 less than the budget for fiscal year 22. A lot of that was because of salaries that were budgeted that we weren't able to fill. So if you go all the way back in our packet from today, page 57.
Yes, it's on page, thanks, Jim. It's on page 56,
56.
57, and that does provide a sum. It is not on here. That's something I can obtain. But it will show example for the general fund. Right now, the expenses, this could adjust, is at 9,007,000. The budget was 9.2 million. A large part of that was due to a decrease in Department 201 with the vacant positions with the HR manager as well as the administration specialist. So that was the primary driver of that. And that's something that we looked at in March when every month we had to do a budget monitoring. We were anticipating being below budget, but not that far below budget. And that was a primary driver. And there are obviously other drivers in there that increased expenditures as well as decreased expenditures, but that's the primary one I want to point it out. Then for the 107, that was fully utilized. And for Fund 301, that was an open labor position that drove that. And for Fund 302 was.
So Greg, will you follow up when you get those splits and shows? For
Yes,
the year?
yes, I can.
I think that these pages 26 and 27 are very simple, very straightforward, easy to understand financial reports. And these, I feel, would be very valuable to look at every meeting, to look at how we're doing every year. I really struggle with this fund level reporting because it doesn't get kind of the big picture of what's going on overall in the parks. It helps when you get to the place where you really want to start drilling down, but if we don't know where we're starting up here, it's kind of hard to get a grip on where we should be going down. So
That's absolutely something we could share.
these are great.
Go back to the Commissioners Fund. And Molly, that's absolutely something I can provide once the book's closed.
It doesn't look like it's gonna too much work to get. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
I think going back, and that's where we have tracked positively versus budget every year. But to your point, you absolutely are correct. Seeing in the budgeting process an estimate for the actual is, I think, key. And I think once we get everything, one system might help that process too.
Jim is reasonably tracked positive mostly because of labor positions not being filled.
Yes, that,
Throughout the year, right? And then will fiscal 23, are we in the same position that we have been historically, or have we filled more positions and have fewer opportunities to come in under budget as a result of those open positions not being filled?
Yes, Commissioner Leonard, that is what we would want to get to, decrease that attrition rate. We usually average about 20 to 25 full-time positions that are vacant annually. And the hope is to get that down to 10 or 15. You're always gonna have vacancies, but you do want to decrease that amount.
Yeah, and Molly, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I agree that from a salary standpoint, which is over 50% of our budget, we tend to always have unfilled approved positions in there. But with the escalation in costs, and again, to Craig's point, city administration gave us those fuel numbers. Do we use city fuel stations for our Phillips?
Yes.
Yeah, so it could be that the city is locked in, I don't know. But anyway, we hope, yeah, I don't want to go where I was going.
Maybe I could stop by the city shop.
You know where it is, yeah. But anyway, I have the same concern that, but again, knowing that historically we've tracked favorable to budget, gives me a little more comfort, but I think this year will be a challenge.
All right, I have a question. What are we paying, what are taxes? I thought we didn't pay taxes. What are we paying taxes on?
Oh, that is we do pay for assessment taxes on property for land. It's a minimal amount, only about 16,000 a year, but most of that is for urban forestry. We pay the urban forestry assessment for the whole city. And that calculation is not taken, that's an automatic give to us from the city. They do not, when they do a general fund reduction, they remove that out. And that's
And
main.
how much is our urban forestry revenue?
That is 635,000. Comes
We're
from,
getting 680. So what are we getting in for the urban forestry program?
Yeah, it's.
yes. Urban forestry should be receiving about 2.4 million total.
Yeah, 2.4.
2.4 million, and
Yes.
600,000 of it is coming from ourselves.
From ourselves, yes, from the city.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and included in that though, I believe, and it's something really weird, I believe all federal and state owned property is part of that as well. I'm not positive, but I think I remember reading that somewhere along the way, but you're absolutely right. And forestry assessment is somewhere in the 2.3, 2.4 million dollar a year total. Goes into the forestry.
Any other questions, concerns?
I have a question on the staffing. And Craig, you mentioned we typically have about 20 open positions,
That is correct.
and we're looking in the coming year to get that down to around 10.
Yes, I would like to see that vacancy rate around 10 to 15. Knowing we have a full-time amount of 157 full-time equivalents, you're always going to have some type of vacancy rate.
Sure.
So, Craig, bring back that staffing report. That's important, it's where we're spending, as Jim said, 55, maybe 60% of our dollars. It's been the biggest limiting factor on being able to work. So understanding where we have gaps in our team is really important. These are our assets.
I can work with Derek on making sure you all have that staff.
We gotta get, show us where your pinch points are.
Genuine teams also trying to do services.
Yeah, the good news is that positions are budgeted, so there's dollars there. The bad news is that we haven't been able to fill them to date. So even if we had 100% filled approved positions, budget dollars are there for it. But that's always what we have excess at the end of the year.
But we've been doing a really good job, like.
Yeah.
Staff recommends that commissioners approve the budget for $1,832,495 for the commissioners fund.
I'll state once again that this is budget, and we do have, should we get into the year, there are available funds should we need them for additional things. And as Craig mentioned, as he works with Joel and staff and coming up with capital budgets, I'm pretty confident she'll be coming back to us this year for additional requests for capital for projects.
I'd just like to say good job on turning off the spigot. You're about to keep filling up the fund. You're supposed to have it now, so.
And I'll give a plug out, this is the importance of, I think, having a finance investment committee. And right now, I'm the only one on that from the commission, but also we have Steve, John Nyer continues with us on that, Steve Bowman from the YMCA, and Craig. I would love to have more members of the finance committee. If you all know of people, I would love to have people that understand investments, not that are experts at investing, but can look at reports from banks and our investing partners to be able to evaluate how are we doing. So I think one of the objectives I have is to try and beef up that investment committee.
What are the requirements of a member of that committee time? How often do you meet?
We meet every other month,
Yeah, every other month or quarterly.
at least quarterly, maybe a little bit more. What we try to do at each meeting is to bring in one of our fund managers. So we will either bring in US Bank or PNC or Fifth Third and say, how have we done the past year? How has their performance been compared to one of the other money managers for us? We do review, like we did here. We look at fees, how much the different managers are charging us in fees. So from a time standpoint, I would say there's not a lot of commitment, but we really need people that can understand investment returns and that sort of thing.
And to help out with time, meetings are held via Zoom at this time.
Good. Sounds like a high impact.
Yeah, and that's what I would love to have. And it's a great place for people that want to be involved as a volunteer. To be on this committee. I also try through this, Kevin Flynn has continued on that committee. Appreciate his time. But we also keep that committee up to date on what's going on in parks, just because they're volunteering, we want them to feel like they're part of parks.
Right.
So I would encourage everybody that's got. So that was a big diversion for what we have in front of us is a proposal from Parks staff for approving our current budget. And what was the amount again, Steve?
It is $1,832,000.
Are there any other questions, comments?
I'll move to accept the staff's recommendation.
We have a motion to approve,
Second.
recommended, and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Craig, thank you for your work on this. And we look forward to you coming back with Joel at your side on opportunity to spend more of our money.
Looking forward to that too, Commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move, I'm sorry, go ahead. Please.
Last question on that.
Yes.
Going back to the report on our fair and pure assets. As you're thinking about spending down, is that a part of your strategic thinking?
Absolutely, Commissioner. We, as I'll present here in a little bit with our update for the month, we've shown you all this time a project list of about 150 projects. There is a separate list. Some of the grants that are here were things in infrastructure report are already on that list, many of them. But we are also diving into a consideration list beyond that for every park. Dissecting that Brand Secretarial report, putting some human, professional eyes to it, making sure that we agree with their assessments, things like that, and that will populate the next report, all of which will help inform the next capital improvement plan. 24-25. So yes, ma'am, here's the right now.
Thank you. Okay. We'll turn it over to Priscilla for our next agenda item, the PNC Commissioners account.
We're gonna have Frank about that.
Frank?
Next item, this is so we just discussed the commissioner's budget. The next item is to where the commissioner's budget money comes from. So whenever there is endowment distributed, distributions from endowments, revenue from gift shop sales, and donations from the Parks Foundation or Greater Cincinnati Foundation or other entities, they go into the PNC accounts. We have 3 accounts there. One's a checking account, one's a money market account, one's called an investment account, but it's more like a money market account. That's where that 4.9 million we're discussing is housed. We are one of the only departments in the city that actually has an outside account that's not within the city's Fifth Third accounts. So the city finance department made the request that we transfer the money into the city's Fifth Third account, and we provide a budget for Fund 430, the Commissioner's Fund, into the city's financial system. And we start accepting the donations and revenues from outside entities and us ourselves into the city's Fifth Third account. This way, the city has a full picture of what the Commissioner's Fund, the Park Board budget is, revenue coming in and expenditures. And staff agrees with this. It will decrease the amount of work on my team. It'll provide also better tracking. Each of the funds discussed on the Commissioner's Fund is set up in the city's fund already by separate bureaus. So example would be the Meyer Fund has its own bureau. It's 1059, and that's how each of these funds are set up. So if we would provide that transfer over, those monies would be transferred into each of their own bureaus. And that's how we would track and maintain those balances. And staff is fully supportive of this. It is up to the commissioners if they would want to transfer those dollars over to the city's Fifth Third account.
So am I right, as it stands now, when we want to spend money from those funds, we have to transfer them to the cities so then it can move through the procurement process?
Exactly. Example would be August 1st, I believe. They have a council meeting. I'll be there because we need to transfer $500,000 over to Fund 430. So we have dollars to be able to spend for this budget. And we usually do distributions quarterly from the PNC account into the city's account. Whenever we receive grants though, from the Parks Foundation, those are separate ordinances and everything will be treated the same.
So Ted, layer on a little bit of color, and Jim, you have a lot more color than I do, but at least this round of requests came from a call that I received from Karen Holder, who's the city's finance director. She and I have known each other for years and worked together on many city projects. She said, hey, we got this letter from the state auditor that draws an issue about the parks managing funds on 2 separate systems. This is the audit comment. She said typically the state makes these type of comments for a couple of years and makes a request for us to correct them. And at some point they'll mandate that it be corrected. We'd like to get in front of this and move this into a standard city system where where the Parks Fund is housed all on one financial system. Whereas now I understand we get a city's financial system and we've got a separate layer on top park system where you really have to do some double accounting. So she didn't signify that it was any need on their part to kind of see the whole picture or have a peek at the availability for our funds, but you know that goes much better. They've got visibility into it.
Yeah, with all due respect, Karen, the comments that come out in the state auditor's report have been the same comments since 2018. And it's been a recommendation for for internal control. Has nothing to do with mandates from the state that they have to be done this way. Yes, we're the only entity that has accounts outstanding like this, but we're also the only entity that's got endowment funds like we have. That's why we have the separate accounts. That's why we're different. Bottom line, I'm gonna vote to approve this, but I will do it only because I think it will give more flexibility to Craig and his group as far as reporting. It's only the keeping the separate books for the endowment funds and the commissioner's funds. The redundancy of that, I think, is the only reason why I'm gonna vote to approve this. There is absolutely no reason. I've read the original Crow report, which was the city's independent audit of the park board. The state auditor every year since then has only referred to the recommendations of the Crow report. So it's the Crow report recommendations that the state is drawing upon. And it in no way says that the city has to have these funds. It says that somebody should be looking at an all funds budget. And in fact, the Crow report said if it were a combined budget, it would give the park board and the park board's finance committee a view into total expenditures of the parks. That's what Craig is doing. And for the past 2 years, we have replied to the city. We are doing that as a park board. So the only thing that's not being done is that the city doesn't have this in their capital budgeting system so that they have full visibility into these funds, which was the reason why 2 years ago, the city asked us to do this as well. And then with a discussion with the city manager and with the law department and finance, it was agreed, no, there's no need to do this. There's no need to consolidate. So I reject the premise that it's because of fear of retribution or requirement by the state for us to do this in the future. I have no doubt that that's not the case. But number one, again, is the ease by which then Greg and his group can do reporting from CFS versus the independent reporting we do and the city reporting. And then number two, the fact that we are spending down this money. To me, our objective is to get those balances. This wouldn't be an issue if we had spent the $4 to $5 million that's sitting there today. If we had spent it over the past 5 years, 6 years, there would be no issue. But because we haven't spent it in that account, PNC Bank keeps growing and growing, that's why it gets more visibility. I have no doubt that with Greg, with Joel's direction here, that we can start moving forward with spending it. And then number three, the third reason why, another reason not to do it is because PNC is a very good supporter of parks, and to move $4 million to $5 million out of PNC to a Fifth Third bank account, which earns very, very little, is a drawback. But at the end of the day, I'm more concerned about getting the money spent than I am fighting the city over their interest in having a full picture of the park board's finances.
I am too. So did you make a motion, Jim? Sounds like the same with that.
Question, what is the interest rate loss that we would have as a result of moving it from an interest-bearing account to a nominal interest-bearing account?
Well, we would, currently we follow Ohio Revised Code, which is those accounts, so it's very low interest anyway. And we would move to the city and follow their, the city's investment policy, which really is in line with Ohio Revised Code for investing.
So is it $10,000, you think? $200,000?
Usually account for, I'd have to look at it, that maintains, say, a balance of 2 million. I can double check numbers. We may get around 40,000 a year, 45,000 a year of interest.
On the,
I'd say 3 million, about 40,000 a year.
40,000 a year.
So probably about 50.
commissioners, on the commissioners fund?
Our money market account just moved from 0.03% to 0.08%.
Right, that's right. We had it invested. This is where, this wasn't brought to the finance committee, so it was news to the finance committee that we had changed how it was invested based on direction from the city and how to invest the park board funds. I'm not gonna go there. But we were investing, other than money market, we were investing in other items. Now, the city is saying you need to invest it per Ohio revised code. We haven't gotten into it. Bottom line is, yeah, it's been $50-some thousand. But at the end of the day, our objective is to spend it down.
Right.
So I would not look at it, and Brad, I had.
That works both ways.
It does.
Because you spend it down, then his work is gone, right? I mean, so if you continue to do a little bit more work till you spend it down, get the benefit of the interest bearing, you can support a good partner PNC account. And for me, it continues to keep a separation from us and the city. Back, when we first started, there was a big to-do about getting absorbed by the city and becoming one as the city. I think it's really important for us to have our own identity and continue to make sure that subtle separation continues to exist. And I fear that this is just one more thing that then, kind of or absorb into the city and lose some of our own identity. That's just my point of view, and that's why I would vote no against it. Sorry about the extra work you and your team are going through, but if Joel spends it down, that's incentive for you to get Joel to spend it down quicker, so you're this a little bit easier.
How realistic is that in terms of time? What would that look like? If we were to adopt the strategy of spending it down, as President Guest says, it wouldn't be an issue if there weren't so much money there. So if we were to spend it down, what would that look like? How long would that take? And is that even reasonable to do?
Commissioner, that would depend on really identifying capital need projects and moving the money into those, as well as obviously if we don't take distributions, that will help spend it down the next couple of years as well. But really, that's going to be capital projects.
But it would take a couple of years, and we've been facing capacity issues in terms of spending down. So that strategy, it sounds reasonable. It doesn't sound feasible from time.
It would take time to spend that down, yes.
Commissioner, I don't know exactly what those funds are allowed to be used for. That's why I consult with Craig often, with many of the things that we do. But we are, as we're building this table out, many of the projects we're looking at are either approved by you all or you're aware of them. Some of those may not have been funded. So the next step that we take in the next month, rectifying not just the projects, but the money associated with those, is to meet with Craig several times, see what has already been funded, ensure that those encumbrances are matching what's shown in the ETS system, and then identifying projects that we know we need to do right now that may or may not have funds already shown, and then assigning those funds with your approval to those projects. That's where we hope to go in the next 45 to 60 days with every project that we have.
But in terms of efficiencies, there will never be zero. It will always be something. We'll see the funds in these accounts for us. Then we just move over to the city so that they can get through the procurement process.
That is correct. There was always going to be a balance in these accounts, because if we'd ever draw it down to zero, we wouldn't be able to really do a budget if we don't have that revenue coming in.
Yeah, the concern that Commissioner Castellini has expressed is the same concern that the foundation pushed when we were negotiating the MOU back when these accounts were left the way they were, was that there's been an agreement with the city that when the foundation was established, that the city's budget would not be impacted by the fact that we had this foundation over there that was raising money for us. At the same time, the city has said, because we've got these endowments sitting there from 100 years ago, we should not be penalized on a current year budget. What the process that the city is asking us to do is to move all of that money into budgeting so that all the budget documents that are now presented as far as the city budgets include the roll-up of money that we get from our endowments and from the Parks Foundation. So that has been, to Commissioner Linder's points, that's been the pushback that, no, the more that you put that money out there, the easier it is for someone at city council or within the administration to say, well, why do we need to allocate all this money when they got all this money there? So the objective was to not, even though they've got access, they know all the information. It was just that it's not slapping in the budget numbers that are published everywhere, all of that money being part of that.
And with that, commissioners, I want to remind you, we do have other restricted funds that do have large balances with the city. Smell Riverfront has a $3.3 million balance. A few of the other ones have $1.5, $1.2 million balance. And I've never seen them in my 3 years here want us to offset any expenditures and take away dollars because of these balances.
Yeah, but don't you think it's a subtle thing that they're gonna look and say, oh, okay, well, instead of fuel as an example, instead of jacking up our fuel thing, maybe somebody was saying, they've got a lot of money in this other, so we'll keep the fuel, budget for this year the same as last year, even though we know it's gonna cost 40% more, because they can afford it, because they've got these other things. And they might not overtly come out and say it, but I gotta believe it's impacting their thought process.
Right.
When others are still asking for it, and, resources that don't have these kind of. No, they are, it'll just make it easier, they'll just have a clearer picture.
Some of the conditions we've been through the last 3 or 4 budget cycles, I think that would be a real opportunity to start getting those funds. So I think there's some level of comfort with that. That's not. Obviously, it could in a future day, but I think they would want to do that. They have to
Is there some ordinance that says that I seem to recall reading somewhere about the city not taking into account the independent funding that parks may have in their budget decisions? I remember reading it.
You're absolutely right. There was back when the foundation was established, the foundation pushed and a resolution was passed by city council that the city's budgeting process would not be impacted by the establishment and existence of foundations.
So whether or not it factors into their thinking, isn't articulated, that's the commitment that they have made to parks, that would not, our other assets would not impact their budgeting decisions. The question that I had about adopting this or moving the money, I understand how the reporting would be simpler. Does that in any way affect efficiency in terms of getting things done? Do we get any benefit?
No, because as long as we're moving the money in there and it's available for spend, there's not gonna be any efficiencies for operations on getting money spent faster.
So it's not about timing for putting it before city council to get a vote on it. That is not impacting the bond.
So who would benefit the most? I understand you guys would benefit from kind of ease of the accounting of it, the processing of those transfers. The city also would be more efficiently processing this as well.
It would also benefit the city. It would benefit the budget and finance evaluation, because obviously whenever we want to move money over, we have to submit ordinance request, as well as the law department who draws up
So
the
that would
ordinance.
reduce the paperwork. If we would do this, that would reduce paperwork on your end.
That is correct.
And you say you do that once a quarter.
Once a quarter, depending on need. It could be more than once.
in this.
5 or 3 or 4 golf carts and get this over with. It's like attractive.
There you go.
Right, it's bike trail.
This is an interesting one. Knowing how Commissioner Castellini feels, I think I'm gonna reverse myself and be no on this.
Well, I'm just wondering, is this dictated by a specific date that we have to?
So we don't have to,
We don't necessarily have to decide this
This
meeting.
is not an issue that's like, we've got to do it this year, standard break. Big divisive problem between the commissioners. I'm with, listen, I'm CPA, I've spent a lot of time with the county group, so to me, this is not a big issue and a no-brainer, but it creates a
One thought would
feeling
be
of,
to postpone it for a month or two to kind of let
yeah,
Joel flesh out the project list to get a sense of between dog parks, between bike parks, between other parks, whatever, to get some indication as to the run rate and the depletion of, of fund.
So you want to see if the plan of how to do 6 months as quickly as possible.
Well, I thought that's what you're gonna be kind of
That's part of
coming
what
up with, right?
coming up with.
Carol gives you 0. She would love that one.
See, there's another source.
Okay.
Anybody want any money out there, raise their hand. Yeah.
For efficiency here, I think we'll table this, rather than taking a vote and it not pass, by 2-2. And we'll bring it up, in a future meeting. Okay, where are we? We are on
give us something to eat, Jim.
French Park Trail. This is an easy one. Greg, you're
Thank you
still
very
there.
much. This is $25,000 for the French Park Trail maintenance from the Parks Foundation. The staff requests the approval of applying and accepting the dollars from the
You
Parks.
guys want $25,000?
This is wonderful. This is wonderful. This is exactly the kind of stuff we're here to support and graciously accept.
Commissioner North has made a motion to accept the 20, second by Commissioner Linder. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we can't go without thanking the Parks Foundation anytime these come up, so thank you. All right, now we're gonna move to, since let's move, let's go down the road, Bellevue Park. Joel?
Commissioners.
Good morning.
How are you? I have three things to discuss with you all today. The first one, as you noticed, was Bellevue. From the list that we're developing right now, we're trying to pick out some of the most urgent projects each month to give a focused highlight for you all. So you understand you're busy and don't have time always to go see all these things like we do, and our staff does. So trying to put together these 2 or 3 page, 30,000 foot views of these projects as we're getting into just to try to inform you all as best we can on the big picture items that we're trying to accomplish with these designs. So we picked Bellevue this month, specifically because of the security issues that we've seen, people throwing rocks off of the outcrops, things like that. The commission asked us to go and investigate these items, and planning and design did. Chris McGee, our architect, and I went to the bottom side, looked at the rocks that have been piling up there. There's a fencing system along Clifton Avenue right there that has a, Tia, can you pull up the graphic? Or is that possible? If you can't, that's okay.
We got it here.
All right, yeah, commissioners have a copy of it, but if you look at some of the pictures out here, the pictures on the bottom of the graphic that we've seen, those bottom 2 kind of show the current condition of the rock. The initial investigation, we heard at first that people were throwing rocks off of this outcrop. Initial thoughts were that some of these rocks were falling some and bouncing near the bottom of that step, breaking off and shooting out in the middle of the road. I've seen that happen a little bit, but the videos and neighbor public comments obviously have confirmed that there actually are some vandalism and people up there doing some things. So when we looked at how we would approach securing this site better than what we are right now, it's important to note that there, if If you look at the top left picture there on the right side of your exhibit, that shows a cut in the fence from existing vandalism. I understand that that's been fixed many, many times over the years. You can literally walk down to the right of that picture and there's about 150 foot, more fence that comes down. This red right here is shown on the left side. That is where that fence stops. It doesn't connect down to the bottom. It's kind of almost vertical at that point. It doesn't make any sense to do that. If you're going that far down to get around, you can go all the way to the road and come back up the other side of that. So we looked at that, tried to extend that fence, didn't see a whole lot of benefit in doing so. We've had a couple contractors out to the site to look at some things. From my understanding, the rocks at the bottom of the hill have been there. Parks has been in charge of the maintenance of that for approximately 4 years. That hasn't been cleaned out in 10 years. I believe Public Services was involved before that. We've been in contact with them over the past couple months that I've been here trying to talk through that. It quickly became apparent that they're as understaffed or worse than we are. And to get to that kind of stuff as an ID bill and try to do that much cheaper inside, our own Cincinnati walls here was not going to be timing effective. Initial quotes to do almost everything you see here, excluding the geomesh fabric. That was just an example to show some more armoring that we could do there. Excluding all that, we're starting to get quotes back. I mentioned in my report that that's about it. We assumed that those fixes, including all of that, fixing the fence, adding some more deterrent, probably double layers. I don't want to get into too many specific details about the security things we're adding, but the quotes are starting to come back, and for that, we may be a little more than the 125,000. I haven't reviewed those yet, but it's looking like to clean this out to a foot below what you see, move all of those rocks up to Sinton so that we can use that for armoring and things like that, not just waste that Bellevue rock. We're going to take it, use it, secure it in one of our sites. And when the time comes to add some limestone somewhere, we're going to use that as actual, so those kind of things we're trying to, keep all of the sustainability in mind while we do these. We're looking at about $150,000 though to re-secure this site. That's also going to include the trails that have been cut in illegally beyond that fence down to the outcrop. Some of our DNR folks, in conjunction with the contractor, are going to manage some of those invasive species, pull them across the existing trails. That's something that's used as a deterrent, making it even harder for folks, even if they get through the fence and want to cut through 2 layers of cabling and all that. They're still not going to have an adequate path to get through there.
You'll pile up a lot of brush then to cover up.
Yes, Commissioner. Yep, and we're working with our DNR staff on that. They have some great best management practices ideas on how to implement those things with Greg and Drew, the folks that presented to you a couple months ago, and Crystal as well. Obviously, she's instrumental in that, and Garrett. So we're working through that with those folks to provide the best, possible deterrent there. Naturally, there are other things that we can do, but they're not included in this quote, like cabling across those trails, even farther deterrent, which we don't want to hurt anybody either. And we understand that. So really just trying to secure the site so we're not getting rocks thrown and bottles thrown off of those outcrops.
So this has been the destination for college kids for at least 30 years, because when I was in college, it was. And when I was in college, there was a college student that fell off his cliff and died. He's probably happened since then. So signage is obviously important.
Absolutely.
Fencing is important. These rocks that you've got here, when you say removing them 10 feet from the fence, are we talking about the bottom of the fence or the top of the fence?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Commissioner. If you see the dashed line on the bottom, that pretty much represents where that fence is. And there's about a 4 to 5 foot retaining wall, concrete wall there that you walk along Clifton Avenue on the sidewalk. Beyond that retaining wall up for 4 or 5 feet is this installation that you see there above that. That's the rock safety net, as I call it in my report. Rocks fall against that. So they're basically going to dig behind, take all of that fencing out, take all of those rocks out to a foot below the top of that retaining wall, getting it completely back to where it should have been with no falling rock in there. Move all of the usable rock to one of our facilities such that it can be used elsewhere. Re-put new fence in because it's damaged, because it hasn't been cleaned out in so long. It's damaged to the point that it can't be restrung. So new fencing is included in that as well. So cleaned out completely from the bottom side so that you're not getting that pile up against the wall. And then, hopefully getting on a more normal maintenance schedule. So the next time we have to do this, we don't have to replace that fencing. That's an astronomical part of this cost.
Is the geo mesh, is that included in that? That's not.
No, sir. That was one that we showed. If we are more concerned about the falling rock from just falling and things cracking off. It's another layer that we could add, but that's a significant cost, like more than $100,000 for sure to add that.
So has the fence, the existing fence have been effective at preventing the falling rocks from going into the street?
Absolutely. If you look at it,
That's a good solution. It's just
it's just
kids throwing stuff off. That's really
that's correct. Yep. So
There are two distinct issues, right?
over,
Vandalism, rocking stuff, and then falling rocks.
yes, and if you get a big enough rock, Commissioner, we thought and we've seen that they'll bust down there. Seeing this how this is already 2 or 3 feet over the bottom of that retaining wall and up on that fence already, they'll crack, they'll bust. Some pieces fly into the street, and homeowners that are already, concerned about people throwing things, obviously they then say, this is more vandalism from above, or, in either case, you don't want a rock out in the middle of the street.
So if it were not for the rocks being thrown, this would be an issue we need to address anyway.
Absolutely. Yes, Commissioner.
Secure that.
Yes, that's true.
So that's one piece, and the other piece is limiting access
Yes,
so that people can't get close enough to throw things on.
that is correct. So we looked at that from the safety perspective. I want to introduce, as we're prioritizing projects from the, Branstetter Carroll report and all those things. Bellevue had several of those inside of there, and we've, investigated this part quite a bit since I've been in this position. I actually went up here one Friday night just to see how it functions. The turnaround is completely full of cars on both sides, as you all may or may not have seen for the outlook over there. We've talked with Jack Martin several times. Thank you very much for your input, Jack. I appreciate all of that. It gets me up to speed much quicker than I could get on my own doing this investigation. So learning some of these problems from the intimate perspective of a community member is very helpful for me, and I appreciate that. So some of those ideas that we discussed when I talked with Jack, and Chris was at that table as well with some other community members, were just some of the things they've seen and we agree with. The turnaround could easily be sectioned off such that you don't get that illegal parking in the middle of a weekend, to where you've got, essentially you can't even pull through and loop around that turnaround. Adding some temporary bollards in that situation is something we're discussing to see if that improves some of the functionality of the park, allows that area by the overlook to be more of a destination for food trucks potentially, and walking, so more than cars just piled in as much as they can. We appreciate the fact that we're in Clifton and there's limited parking to begin with, so we're not taking away any of that kind of thing lightly. We're just studying it right now to see what those impacts would be and if it would help us enhance the park. For a more big picture item that we're working on, that would probably require some funding outside of this, is replacement and preservation of the pavilions. By replacement, I mean the slabs underneath of the pavilion are disheveled. Some of that stuff is starting to show signs of differential settlement, and you can see that in the concrete pavilions above. They're starting to move a little bit differently, and that tells us that something's happening in the ground that we don't want to happen. Either some sort of void is causing, sloughing below those foundations, but as a bigger picture project that will happen in the next couple of years, we're investigating the master planning of that Bellevue Park as that has been done before, to maybe implement some of these items. So essentially, that's what I wanted to share with you all today. That's where we're moving with Bellevue. If we would have had these quotations for the security things earlier, I would have been able to digest those. We got those back last night, and I didn't have a chance to formalize that prior to get you all an ask. But basically, just wanted to inform you of where we are with this process and master planning Bellevue.
Joel, as far as the turnaround,
Yes.
is there room with that parking lot there? With the parking lot there, there's room to turn around and
Absolutely.
go out.
Yes.
If that's parked, I've not tried to do that with cars parked there. If the cars are parked in the lot, would there be sufficient radius to turn around and go back down if the cars are up there?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We've been having First Friday events all year. I think we were rained out in May. We had a big one in June. We had the 1st of July. Actually, we did the whole weekend through 4th of July. We closed the circle off then. There are cars that come up expecting to be able to drive into the circle and park and stay, and they have plenty of room to turn around. That's not been an issue. For several of the events we've had police officers there, so that's all been under control. We haven't had any issues with that.
Is there enough parking in the existing lot? You know, probably not. You know, during the summer, it's not a big issue. There's pretty much parking on Ohio Avenue that people can walk, and a lot of the kids are students. I mean, but we've had 200 to 300 people at our events and at the same time, not just flowing through an evening. And we've not had issues with cars coming up and just stopping in the middle of the road and parking. That's not been an issue. They've been able to park.
Which parking do you give up? Like
Well, you don't give up any legal parking.
legal parking, you don't give up any.
You don't give up any legal parking. Yeah, it's already signed, no parking. It's in order.
There may be 50 or 60 cars parked around that loop on both sides, and then you see a family trying to get through between the two, and if you got somebody coming from both ways, it becomes impossible quickly, so.
Joe, this is sorry.
Thank you. I just got a quick question on signage. One of the solutions you mentioned is big up trespassing signs.
Yes, ma'am.
There aren't any there now, and can we do that like right now?
I will have to work with Rocky's team to see how fast they can be put together. As you see in that top left picture of the existing fence vandalism, Commissioner, there is a no trespassing sign that we put in there. It's been vandalized almost immediately, you know, so.
That's the first thing you do, right?
So absolutely, those are something that's already been made. I will speak with Rocky about those and how fast we can get that, but certainly he's involved in this project, and the implementation of those signs will be something that we deal with in-house.
You need one of those pictures of somebody falling.
I'm falling and can't get out.
It is, like Chris walked me out there my second day just to look at these problems, like even, 3 months ago, and I was amazed just that was possible, but,
It's like a Red River Gorge Cliff.
Yes.
You don't realize it's there.
That's right.
I mean, it sounds funny, but I think that's a really valid point, because I think people could go there and not realize the danger.
That's correct.
So it's more than just no trespassing.
That's right. We're doing our best to detour, not just put in, regular 4-gauge metal this time, do some pretty robust fencing and security type fencing that may detour them from trying to get in there. So.
Joe, you're close to contracting for safety, because this is a safety issue.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to wait a whole
Okay.
month for you, so I would like to make a motion that we authorize you to spend in this range.
I can tell you the range, Commissioner, if that helps you. The quote that I've received as of yesterday is $154,000. I have not vetted that quote to ensure that it exactly covers what we want. I got it last night, but that is the high end range. That's not to say we can't negotiate or value engineer something out of that. If you give me a high limit number, obviously that's what will stay inside.
I want to give you the authorization, when you review these and you have something to go for safety reasons.
Yes, sir.
I want to give you the authorization to just do it.
Okay.
You need to wait for us. So I'd like to make that motion. Tia, whatever I just said, just make that the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I second.
If I can ask for a limit, I guess, or a dollar amount, not adding any contingencies or anything.
Not to exceed 200,000.
Yes, sir. That's more than
Is that right?
adequate.
Yeah.
We'll do better than that, but
I know you will.
gives us enough.
That's why I don't mind 200, so you'll get less than that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So there's a motion, second, approved? Okay,
We
thank
will
you.
enact this as soon as possible.
Two things about the signing and closing out the loop. Are those things that can be done? You said signage, yes.
Yes,
Closing out the loop, is that something that we can do?
very simply. Yes, we can order the removable bollards like we've done recently at Owl's Nest to fix that one. I'm sure our operations department can help with that, and P&D can facilitate that as well. We do it at other parks, and it's something that is simple to implement.
And this is a second issue, so it's.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all. I
And
appreciate it.
before we move on, Jack, thank you. And do you have something else?
Sure. Just a couple other comments. I want to, first of all, just say, Bellevue Park has gotten a lot of attention over the last year. Rocky did a survey that I suppose has been shared with you. This is what came up with, we need to block off the turnaround, we need to revitalize the concession stand, activate it. And we've been doing that. We got a $10,000 neighborhood activation grant from the city, in addition to another $1,500 from the Parks Foundation.
we've been using that. Unfortunately, when you get into the added costs of insurance, because we're getting liquor permits and hiring police, the $10,000 pretty much goes towards that. So, we're working to get really good deals on bands and stuff like that. We are selling beer and making some money. But it's working, we're trying to show that it's activated. We really want to get moving with this thing. Cindy and Chris also gave you a report last, I think, February, March. We went into the condition of the pavilion that has a lot to do, not just with the slippage of the hillside and the settling of the slabs, which the issue with that is it's starting to bring some of the other pavilions down, not the building pavilion, but the other pavilions are actually starting to move with it down the hill. And that's something that I think we all think needs to be addressed pretty quickly. And I know they've got engineers looking at it. I hope the solution isn't to have to put a Mount Adams pier wall across the bottom. Anyway, something has to be done with that. But I think what we want to do is we are willing, and I'm not speaking officially, and I'm not speaking dollar amounts. But we have a significant TIF fund in Clifton Heights. We've already talked to the Heights Community Urban Redevelopment Corporation, Matt Bourgeois, we talked to the Business Association. They are comfortable with us dipping into that to get some stuff done. I would say our first one is to get a master plan started, something that's going to renovate not just the building, but the grounds. Chris and I have talked a lot, and Joel's been part of those conversations, but there's some work that can be done with the grading, where the planters are around the pavilions, the canopies, how the slab works. It makes it easy for people to climb up on the roof and do stuff and just frankly not treat the building with much respect. So we'd like to get a master plan started, and our thinking was to fund that. It's possible to use TIF money for that kind of a thing, but I think the city's going to feel better. This is economic community development. We have to go through them to do the TIF funding. They want infrastructure, bricks and mortar kind of stuff. So I guess we would like to work with you guys, provide some money to do something, but ultimately we want to get a master plan started immediately. Again, if they're going to do remediation, it's going to deal with the hillside slippage. We want that to be more than just, like I say, a pure wall and tear everything out. We want to be moving towards something. We want to do a beer garden. Parks gave us 6 picnic tables that we painted and put together over the 4th of July weekend that we put inside the circle, and that's worked really well. I mean, people are really using the old picnic tables were not quite inaccessible, but for ADA, they were worthless. So that's working. We're getting a lot of use in the park, and now that we're doing music, people are coming down that didn't even know we had a park with a view like that. So we're going to be working with Joel and Chris, but we want to come up with some money to make it work. And if that's a trade-off that we pay for, electricity in the pavilion, replacing some doors, doing something, like pay for bollards, if we have to spend it on brick and mortar, so we can get a master plan started, that's fine. But we want to come up with at least as much money as we would need to pay for a master plan. And if we trade off to make it legal, how we can spend the money, we're fine with that. But I just want to get that going. This big picture, Bellevue Hill Park was dedicated in 1955. So we're about 3 years off of the 75th anniversary. So it would be really cool to have that building like in 3 years up and ready and going, and we can push the button up the overhead door goes up on the concession stand. We have more than 2 duplex outlets that we can run bands from. We don't have to bring in battery power, temporary lights inside the concession to make that work. Additional lights inside the bathrooms, light them up. We have shower curtains over the women's bathroom stalls because the doors are gone. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We want to help a lot. We've got volunteers that will cut down honeysuckle and throw it in the path so people can't get there. We'll do all this stuff. And we actually want to do a major graffiti removal project this fall. People would melt if we try to do it now, but in the fall we can get it done. In doing that, we would like to make sure there's a camera system set up, that there's some kind of security that's there overnight, and the park is closed at 10 o'clock, but believe me, it doesn't keep people out of the park at 10 o'clock, and that's when most of that stuff happens. So we want to clean it up, we want to make it look right, we want signage that dresses for vandalism and the dresses don't fall over the hill, things like that. But we also would like to get some kind of a camera system up there that's probably gonna take some electrical. And like I say, we are willing to work with you on some of this stuff, so we can get it going now.
Jack, I want to thank you for your leadership over there for a number of years working with this.
Well, I'm being led by about 4 20-year-old kids. And they're doing, I mean, incredible. Some of them are still students, some are, recent graduates of CCM and music production. I mean, we've got some really seriously good kids that are great leading these efforts. Thanks.
And I'm sure Joel, working with you, bringing to us, I mean, this is what we want to do in our parks, partner with you.
It's been really, I mean, the last year we got more attention than we ever expected.
Jack, you described everything it takes to pull this kind of stuff off. Back to my time in college, 30 years ago, we were there saying, gosh, I can't believe they let this building go. Like, this is iconic.
It is, it's unique. I mean, most of the other park structures are, 1933 and earlier. Public Works, this is a relatively new one. It's pretty iconic.
Only 75 years old.
Almost.
72.
Technically, that is 70 years old.
That's just true.
Don't make me older than what I am.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Thank you, Jack. Nice.
I have one more update to share with you all.
Yes, sir.
Matt Hood, the West Region Manager, has been working on a sign for this already. So Bellevue sign is already in the works.
Perfect.
Go in in conjunction with these improvements. So,
Great. Thank you. Okay, let's move to Inwood.
all right. There's a little more update on Inwood at first. This became a focus this month because active construction is happening. There are partnerships happening with other agencies, and it was identified both by our predecessors and by this staff and the commissioners as a significant source of money that we're going to try to spend or try to responsibly work towards revitalizing this park in 2023. So that is kind of the reason why we're bringing Inwood to you today. Some background, sale and development. Parks recently, late last year, early this year, completed the sale of a portion of the park that I understand as of this week is already up for some sort of redevelopment. There were some articles in the Inquirer. I'm aware of those, but we haven't read into that and how this impacts us. Parks does maintain some of the frontage along that portion, even that we sold next to the right of way. That is inaccurately shown on these maps. We didn't know where that is at the time of the publishing of these. So. All right, for some background on Inwood Park, the initial assessment that we're showing today really focuses on lower Inwood Park. As you all are aware, upper Inwood Park in the past 2 to 3 years has received a new playground. This year received updates to the curb and sidewalks as recently as this month, getting that back in good shape. The circle above upper Inwood, much of the curb and sidewalk has been replaced. All of that is in great shape. The new playground is in good shape. I know operations and some of our staff have worked this summer to try to get some of those items put back that were broken, the seat for the slip line and things like that. So I believe the upper Inwood is looking in better shape than it has in a long time. We're focusing on lower Inwood for the majority of what we're trying to do here in the next couple years with this project. Funding wise, Inwood received a substantial amount of money from the sale of the Hollister property. I believe that was in the neighborhood of 1.75 million, of which 250,000, I believe, went back to CRC. So that 1.5 million is dedicated for the Mount Auburn area parks. We certainly plan on spending a whole lot of that in Inwood itself, maybe some in Jackson Hill, as there are some playgrounds and some improvements up there that we feel can make one heck of a difference as well in this same cycle. There's an additional $1.5 million, as you all are aware, allotted in the new budget under 23 for a total of about $3 million worth of things that we are looking to master plan, spend, and responsibly rework this park in the next couple of years. The pavilion building has been closed and unused for several decades. It's blocked up, as you all are well aware, I'm sure. That is a huge point. It's a historic building. We're trying to responsibly rehabilitate that and find a good adaptive use for that now that the pool is gone. That is one of the main focuses of this. Yes, ma'am. Let's see, just to bring this back to the 2021 infrastructure report, it did look at existing sidewalks, park benches, overlooks, the comfort station roof, and additional retaining walls to be in poor condition. So as part of the assessment, there are some big picture items that need to be addressed. Those are really the main things. CRC, and essentially thank you for the money from that sale, has helped us site the basketball court. Commissioner Thomas, I know you were asking about that. If you look at there is an exhibit included from CRC in this we've been working with. We show on that, they show 2 potential places where we would site a basketball court. Planning and design has worked with CRC this month to review those sites initially to kind of give our input on what we feel is best. Overwhelmingly, I believe option number 2, if you look at that, is what we're looking toward, specifically because the grading in that area is conducive to not doing a whole lot of site work to put it in. Sitting in the new parking lot right adjacent to that you can see both the new playground, which is actually in and not shown in this picture, to the towards option number 1. There is the new playground, and then looking back towards option number 2, you can essentially, a police officer or a mom or whoever's playing in that neighborhood can pull into this parking lot in their car. And if you put this basketball court there, you have full view of both your older children potentially playing in the basketball court and the younger kids that may be playing in that playground at the same time. So that made it very, that was the big reason why that may be the recommendation. It also allows us to focus on the pavilion and that whole area holistically and not have that basketball court there. It gives us more options with what to do over there near the pavilion. So that was kind of why we are leaning towards that option number 2 for the basketball court. Commissioner Thomas, I know that's near and dear to your heart. Just wanted to provide an update on that's moving forward. We're working with CRC every day to make sure that's moving.
That's great to hear. And what I had to until our last meeting was this, as we were looking at relocation, that it would in fact be in the park. Because the other earlier conversations sounded like it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And having it be right where it is means that it's accessible to the same kids who would use it.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that's a
Until they put up that fencing a week ago, basically, there were still kids down there with their basketballs using that credit cord that only has 1 pair.
Yeah.
Like it illustrates the room we use for basketball courts in the neighborhood. Quickly as possible.
Used a lot.
Yes.
Even in its condition.
There's one thing the community insisted on, to have a replacement for the kids. That's great.
As an additional update, I attended the community council meeting on Monday. They opened a lot of flexibility with options. So we changed that, rendered to share the location. On-site kiosks to get some feedback from the users. What we're looking for is sport configurations, color schemes, is it the right size? That feedback. Obviously start the project. So
I think that's very good.
How quickly can those basketball courts be put in place?
I'm not certain, Commissioner, because the involvement with CRC, I don't know when those funds or how that's moved, but we can certainly push that forward as quickly as we possibly can.
I've already been received by CRC, and so still gonna do county engineering projects.
That's great.
Awesome.
Do the kids know this?
I don't believe so, Commissioner.
Is there any way, I mean, is there a common gap?
Yes, ma'am. We've been talking a lot with Rocky's team since we've been here about, promoting some of these jobs. We're doing them on site. We've had 2 meetings so far, I believe, talking through those things. We've implemented some of those with some of the bigger projects that are coming right now, International Friendship, some special signage for some of those kind of things. This team has been instrumental in helping us with that. We will continue to do that much more often as we move forward.
So as you can see, I'll give a couple comments. I remember, Steve and I talked about this plan, and I'm really excited about it. And what it's been a long time coming, a really long time coming. One thing I'd like to hear more about is, do we have a program partner? Jack talked a lot about what they're doing to bring people into the park and what this park needs that too. The last thing we need to do is do lots of improvements in this park and drive by it and see it.
Yep.
Number 2, this parking lot.
Yes, from what I understand, Commissioner North, that is partly from the businesses across the street. So I'm not sure how that is regulated or what we need to do there.
Gotta figure that out.
Yep.
Because as we bring more amenities. into this
Absolutely.
park, we're gonna need more park, this for a park of this size, is very, very insufficient. And this isn't a place where we want parents and children parking on the street. It's too busy and it's dangerous. And then I would say that really gets into my final comment, which is even the nature of the way this is drawn out makes me think of a real piecemeal approach to this park. It's a very large area of land. I think it can accomplish a lot. And I would really encourage us to consider getting a master plan done by
Yes,
whoever that may be. I think I'm cautious about doing any significant work really beyond a basketball court to the park as we approach a very significant multi-million-dollar renovation.
I'm happy that you appreciate the cost of this project, Commissioner North. We've talked internally a little bit. As I've explained here, we have about $3 million to spend up front in the Mount Auburn system. Much of that is for Inwood Park, as you know. But the pavilion alone, if we adhere to the restoration standards that we want to adhere to attract more grants for other big restoration projects that we may have coming in the next few years, the pavilion itself is a substantial rehabilitation above and beyond the $3 million that you all have total for the park map right now. So that being said, it's not like we're going to do nothing. We're just going to do this as responsibly as possible. And if it gets to the point where the best approach for this park requires more money or a phasing approach of that respect to get something in so that we can do a majority of the work now while leaving room to improve more later when more funds become available, that's what we're looking for. So absolutely, we are going to, this would be a third-party master plan for a couple of reasons. We need some geotechnical evaluation for sure on the existing 800 to 1,200 feet of wall that goes around that side of the park. It's crumbling. That is a massive thing that needs to be undertaken first so that we make sure that the park is stable before we put a whole lot of money into the rehabilitation on top of it. So there'll be a two-part master plan / third-party consulting helping us with that. Ensuring that the site is stable will inform the master planning and how that will move. So stabilizing that, there's even a spot down in the lower right corner, as you can see, the southwest corner has 4 or 5 buildings right there. In previous, iterations that I've seen, some of that even included potentially buying that area and taking some of that out, some of that retaining wall out, because right in that corner down there, it's about 8 foot tall. I'm not certain of the ownership status of those buildings. We've looked into it a little bit, but I don't know enough, and we haven't, progressed to the point where that's a material I need to deal with at this time. But certainly we will master plan the park, Molly. And as far as a community representative, I believe we have one here that is very active and keeps us on our toes and makes sure that we're well aware of everything that's going on. Anyway, no, not at all. I appreciate the input always, Carol. Thank you for meeting me even in my second or third week starting here. I hope you're seeing that we're paying attention and that we're trying to move as many of these forward as we can. So I appreciate your input. Thank you. The villain is night burial.
Yeah, no, it's very old.
I'm not sure.
It's probably
30s.
1933.
Yeah.
I have many pictures, even of people swimming in the pool. So that's stuff that you may have seen that before. But
That's what we want to see again.
okay.
That's what we want to see again. It's going to see kids in parks.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
can address some of that for you. The kids from Rising Star, which is a preschool, public preschool,
Right.
come to the playground all the time. I did a charrette before that playground was built, one at the top, and those kids came back for the grand opening. That was pretty cool. And I go there all the time. The playgrounds are full of kids all the time. But I've had concerts there, yoga every Monday night. We have not done this since 2019 because of COVID. We had an ongoing art class for kids every week during the whole summer break, school from school. CCM did a concert last September. We had 150 people show up. We did July 3rd, we did Rosy Fireworks, had 125. So we have stuff going on all the time.
It's great.
So action items on our end next is exactly what you were talking about. We want to further refine what we're doing with staff internally. We have not met on site with our other partners, which we value their opinion. DNR specifically, much of this restoration is invasive species removal to the east side of the park. We want our experts' opinions on that and how we can best utilize that space as well. So we plan to do that in the next month, meet with people on site, and hopefully in the next 30 days, come back to you all with a plan for enacting this master plan, which will start the clock, essentially. We will then go forward into purchasing, write a RFQ for that work, some of those kind of things, the structural and the master plan, and then continue to evolve this project as we move forward.
So just to make sure I've got my facts straight, we got how much money from the sale of this that we said generally we used to create from the park? And then the second part was in the city's budget, they allocated capital funding and directed it to improvements in the park.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. That was 1.5.
2.5.
I think it's 3. The Hollister's still
1.5 from Hollister.
Yes.
Gave 250 to CRC.
1.5 under the new budget for fiscal year 23. So a total of 3 million.
So I would move forward. I think you're hearing from us with the basketball court. I mean, whatever needs to happen with that, don't wait for us as far as that process. But to Molly's point, I think you're absolutely right, doing the full blown, and that parking lot clearly is just being used by the people across the street.
Absolutely.
Whatever it takes to. I don't know how the parking lot just sort of showed up one day.
I think it's possible the parking lot may also be used by people who live downtown, they'd rather take the bus down, take the bus, pay for the park. We have the same thing on West Clifton. West Clifton is full during the day, and it's people that just catch buses. And go.
It's definitely people working, they come early in the morning.
Yeah, in the evening, there's nobody parking. Yeah. Great, so we're still up with you.
All right.
Moving
Thank you all.
along. Joel?
It's all right.
And Carol, thank you. Just like your continued interest in your advocacy for this park, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. I believe this is my last item, commissioners. It's maybe the one you've been waiting for the most, but this is our monthly update from the planning and design folks, what we've been working on in the last 30 to 35 days since we've been in the same room with you all. The attachment for this is meant more as a graphic to give you a volume of what's going on right now. We just for a perspective, we added 10 new projects to this list this week in our Tuesday meeting of things that we've been working on lately, things that pop up all the time. This list, it's shown pretty simply right here for this month, but every single one of those lines that you see is a project. The ones that are shown in white that are kind of boxed out larger down on the right-hand side, those are what I will call active projects. 57 to 60 projects that we touch in some form or fashion every single day. Things that we're working on like Lytle Park, that's on that list. Numbers 3, 11, and 19 are the ones that I showed you all today. So those 2 reports that we showed constitute about 3 of those items on that 60 item list. Like I mentioned earlier, we're building a separate list beyond this. That is the consideration list that will have another 150 projects. And the goal of this is to give you all a little bit of time to digest and prioritize on your own, given our recommendations, what we should be working towards in 24 and 25 at this point, not 23 and 23. That's not where we're going to try to go here. So a little bit less reactionary on our end, my end, and a little bit more, giving you all a little bit more time to make informed decisions. That's where we're trying to get with this. So very much in conjunction with what you were talking about earlier. Where we go with this list in the next 30 days is we are working with ETS, CFS, and our own Parks Finance to, for lack of a better term, bypass some of the red tape and start to build custom reports that will allow us to track this money quicker, only from a project standpoint on my end. I don't want to be the finance director for Cincinnati Parks in any form or fashion, but I do need to know enough about what we're doing on our end and the money that passes through that 980 fund that I can responsibly keep a good track of it and let you all know how much available money we have to spend. That's part of that efficiency. Knowing what you have and knowing how to wrap all this stuff up allows us to then plan and move forward with projects faster and potentially, utilize some of those funds that are for projects that we could use. Smale Park, there's many things that we need to fix down there and it has its own fund. So in the next 30 days, what we hope, as Craig alluded to in his, is to marry the current encumbrance report and all of the things that have money allotted to it within this form, such that we know how much available dollars are left in our kitty before the end of 2023, all the time, prioritizing the projects on this list to ensure that we get the ones done that have to be done, know the ones that we don't have funding for that are under this list, and discuss those towards the next budget cycle, so that when we get ready for 2024 and 25, you have a list cooked of things already to hand to Cincinnati and say, here's the money we need. And maybe that's $2 million more than we asked for now, and we can justify all of it. So that's where we're headed with this tool. It's taken a whole lot of time to build. If you saw this, there's probably 30 columns inside of this Excel table that are hidden right now, many financial, many social issues. We're tracking neighborhoods. We're tracking how much money we spend in each part of the city. All of this is building a brain such that we can pivot table many of these things into the CIP plan for you all.
What is the tool you're using?
I'm using Excel right now. Yes.
When can we actually get, as you said, this is a graphic.
Yep.
We couldn't really see.
We can
When
grant
we
access.
get access to be able to actually see these things?
You can have read-only access whenever you want. We're working through that right now, Commissioner, with how we present that to you all and what, we're working in this every day too. So it becomes a point where we're happy to let you all see it and dive into this, even the hidden columns. Obviously, you're the board. You're allowed to see all of this stuff and we're working towards that. But it is basically only because we're still working through that finances that you all don't have the Excel. We can send it to you certainly there if you want to see it now.
And Craig, within 980, are you able to put bureaus? Are you doing that now where you're giving unique project codes to things in 980, or how are you tracking that?
That's gonna be working with them. Every time there's a project, there's a number assigned to it, like a DO number or purchase order assigned to it. That's how we're gonna be able to track that project based on assigning that project. Is whatever DO number is assigned to it, it'll be assigned to that project. That's how we'll be able to track, because one of the biggest issues we run into is the infrastructure rehabilitation dollars all placed into one project number, program number, but you can have 40 projects in there. But by looking at it based on a DO number, that's where we can track it. And
That's exactly right. The whole purpose of this sheet and why it was started was to track the infrastructure and rehabilitation fund that didn't have individual project numbers. We've learned via our conversations with ETS that even inside of that infrastructure and rehabilitation fund, Tom Jones Commons, for example, wasn't its own fund outside of infrastructure. All of those things can be tracked with one unique number, which we will have, and we'll be running a custom report and we'll inform and update this Excel sheet weekly. That's what we hope. So Tuesdays, you should get an update on the comments inside of this that you all can read at your leisure and know exactly, as well as I know, where every single one of these active projects is. And weekly or monthly, certainly, we're going to give you all a financial report update of, we have $2 million out of the money that we have that we don't have assigned to a project. And that will inform you on how best to spend those remaining funds, get more efficient and get some of these things, enacted as fast as we can. And some of that money spent down.
I know this is what we've been asking for. We've been asking for this for 4 years or 5 years. So thank you so much.
Very welcome.
This is perfect, really.
I apologize if it feels like we're moving slow. We're not doing that on purpose. We are trying to do this such that it's useful for the whole department and that it's something that's easily updatable, because we could also build a tool that's way too complex for anybody to use. And we're trying to keep this as simple as we can, but no simpler to get the information that we need.
It's also useful for the foundation for projects. So providing
So what's the status of your team? What openings do you have?
We've actually lost a person since we came here last. Doug Dornetti moved back over to DOTE. He's been here for a long time. So he was one of my supervising engineer 3 or 4, I believe, helped with some of the stuff in the field. He is no longer with us as of Monday. He goes to DOTE. So we are down a person. We've been in contact with UC, specifically the Landscape Architecture Master's Program in the past month. We met with their professors and the dean this past week, and we are working towards a couple things there. We have several candidates for some co-op positions outside of that, we would target a younger student, potentially a first or second year, more towards helping with the preservation and things. We're also interviewing the first candidate for a graduate assistant position on Monday, such that they will help us 20 to 30 hours a week. These are folks that are in their master's program at UC after a bachelor's in either architecture or engineering or something. We're going to throw them some of the more complex projects that we don't have time personally with the 3 staff that we have right now to dive into. Art preservation is one of those. You know, we have 40 or 50 pieces of art throughout our system here that need to be categorized, digitized, essentially, prioritized as far as safety upgrades and things as we've seen lately. Some of those things are a special project that we could have one of those competent folks, you know, work on and help us get ahead of where we would be without that, doing some of the legwork for us, and we'll inform them as we need to keep them moving. We're hoping by a couple to 3 weeks from now to have a couple of those people in place. I know Jenny and Derek have been working really hard with us to help fill some of the other positions that we have. So we have several openings in my department right now. We could certainly use all the help we can get, especially on the project management side. I also want to say thank you to my team, Matt DeBona, being able to come down and help us with some of these things. He's been instrumental. Chris McGee, obviously, Paul helping us on the right-of-way side and some of the history that we don't know, but all of those folks have been instrumental in getting us where we are right now. And it's certainly not my effort only. It's as much or more theirs than mine.
Jim, we're trying to build two.
So this probably won't be the last time I do this. The goal of this sheet obviously is to replace giving you all an update project by project on this, but some of them are important enough that you all need to know what's going on with it. So I just want to quickly go through the projects that we've completed this month. The things that we're working on right now, our major focuses, our current construction and what we plan on presenting to you all in August. So things that we've completed this month, there was some glass at the Crone that was broken. Chris has worked with the contractors there. They got all that stuff fixed in between the shows. So in between Prismatica and the butterflies before them, we had about a week and a half window to get that fixed. All of that went well. They used glass that was out of our stock and will be replaced. They've got some touch-up items to do with the concrete, but all that went as well as it could go. So we're very happy about that. Adlita completed the Bicentennial Commons entrance pavement and walk repairs this month, right down at Sawyer Point there, brand new pavement. Fixed some areas that had some bad traffic loops. I know Lou was following up with new traffic loops to go inside there this month or next. Mount Echo Park Stormwater Inlet was repaired a couple months ago, but didn't make the list before, so we added that on there. And our major projects at Rapid Run are almost complete. The walkway, that was almost a $250,000 project that connected both Glenway and Gurley into the park. It looks great. There's some touch-up items to do with the erosion. I'm meeting Tim Adlita Monday to go through those and finalize that project. And the playground, we're waiting on one piece of equipment. It was supposed to be in the week of July 4th. Was not yet. We're following up with PES to see where that is, but the playground is substantially complete and open right now. Thanks to PES for making a special trip to open that for us about a week in advance of it being done to accommodate an event we had a couple weeks ago. So I appreciate that from them. Our current major focus, as you all are probably aware, I'm not going to get too detailed into it. We talked about Lytle, Laurel Park, the Ezra Charles statue. We've gotten the second change order for the electric through. It's being routed for signatures right now. We've worked with the foundation this month to help secure someone to lift the fountain or to lift the statue onto the granite. That is in the works right now. We've talked to the artist. We know how that's going to work. All of that's being coordinated right now. We expect initial construction on the plaza to start next week. So we're still tracking towards October 1st, if not a couple weeks before that, to give our folks some time to landscape as much as we can and make sure things are done. International Friendship Park, last month, I told you we had gotten the declaration of emergency extended through Greater Cincinnati Waterworks. We appreciate that. We've been working closely with those folks, Sean Powell and Kyle Buckley, to put this park back together. Forever Green has already given us a quote and began work on the irrigation fixes. So they were there last week and yesterday, getting the two ends where they have to connect back into the existing stuff so that we can get all the temporary irrigation fed to the west side of the park beyond what was messed up. So that's in the works right now. We expect Human Nature to give us a proposal very soon for the remaining design of the park and getting that back in. So we should have an update on where that stands to you all next month. But we're moving forward with designing and getting that back in play as fast as we can. The Sawyer Point pickleball improvements are currently in construction. Last month, all of the big stuff was done via Elita as far as the resurfacing of the asphalt. This month, in progress is the final surfacing. I believe that's like 12 or 13 coats of surface course, and it's going on right now. I believe Jenny told me that that should be complete hopefully by the end of next week, and they're targeting a potential soft opening very early August. So that's where we're headed with the pickleball. What we're working on in August as far as new designs and things are Mount Airy, Area 23. We know Core is raising some money for those bike trails out there, and we're making sure that connectivity to that is working. There's 4 or 5 projects kind of included in that Mount Area 23, the comfort station, the pavilion, a couple walking trails, things like that. We're trying to kind of master plan and get on our radar now so that we can go out for consultants if we need to keep that project moving. California Woods was also a project this month that has specific funding under the 2023 fiscal year of $500,000 for road restoration and things. We're meeting on site next week with our own staff to review the erosion issues that could come with that. That is a huge project if we want it to be. It has a big erosion issues above and beyond the stuff that is called out in the report. So we're going to review that, and we will respond with a report very similar to the Inwood and Bellevue reports on California Woods next month. Drake Park, very similarly, has a $500,000 fund to set up for 2023. We're going to review that. I've been there a couple of times to review the big picture items that we may spend that money on. You all will get a report on that next month as well. Construction that's going to start in the next 2 to 3 weeks before we meet again. There are 2 painting projects. The Gibson House and the French House are being repainted. All of their exterior painting is being redone right now, such that that makes it more attractive for people to rent and things like that. Those are almost ready to begin construction right now. We're working on a design for the replacement of water main at French, Alt, and Alms Park with 1 consultant. So we're bundling 3 different water main projects similarly, so we don't have to go through the whole thing for every single park. Petco is working on that with us. We're getting some televising done, but we're in the middle of that, and we hope that we begin to install that stuff at the end of this year. And the Little Duck Creek restoration. Davey has mobilized some rock. That job is going to be complete by October 31st. As far as I know, commissioners, that is all the update that I have for you today. I apologize for being long.
That's a lot of good stuff.
That's a lot of good stuff.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Any questions for me?
Exactly, that's great.
We will.
Okay, Steve, we'll turn it over to you. Director's comment.
Invite Rocky up to give us the team update.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everybody. And yeah, that's super impressive what Joel's been doing, and particularly the visuals that they've been putting out, the images of the park, I think really help tell the story and allow people to understand what's going on and save everybody a lot of time, including my folks, the public, and you all. So, great work. Just have a couple pictures I want to show along with what we're going to talk about. Just a couple quick updates from the staff. One is, you guys remember the terrible storm we had that rolled through on July 6th. That created a significant amount of emergency work, both for our urban forestry team as well as our operations team, to clear those trees out of right of ways and within our parks. There were at least 30 kind of major locations that they had to respond to. It took them almost 3 days to get through the immediate needs of that. Nobody can speak to this better than Mr. Pacella, who was directly involved with his home when that hit. So I want to give a big shout out to them. It really demonstrates the skill and the importance of what our folks do every day. So we wanted to make sure you knew that that happened. On August 6th, it is the last concert for the summer Sawyer Point Summer Concert Series. This is something that Riverfront Special Events helps produce every year. The last concert is coming up August 6th. The headliner is Yo Mama's Fat Booty Band. I really wanted to say that. It's activating that space, it's creating positive energy down there, and it's our folks that are helping produce it. And if you have a chance, get down and check it out and help us spread the word. Next slide, please. As you are aware probably, the Science of Color featuring Prismatica is now on display at Crone Conservatory. I want to give a big shout out to Mark and his team. It's already earned over $82,000 in revenue. This show has. Typically our off major shows like the summer show and the fall show, and there's a short spring show, don't do very well. Typically the summer show brings in about $30,000 for the whole show. They've already brought in $82,000 and it runs until mid-October. So it's really cool. It's getting a lot of word of mouth traction. You can see the prisms here. It's cooler to see them kind of in action. So if you get a chance, go check it out. July is National Parks and Recreation Association Month every year. There's a national theme. This year's theme was We Rise Up for Parks and Recreation. So we've been running a very successful campaign through social media. Part of it is mimicking the influencer, the dude with sign, if you haven't seen it. So in case you guys aren't on our social media, I wanted to show you a couple of these pictures. This one here says, trash goes in the trash can. That's what's on the sign. If you go to the next one. Screen time is overrated. Take your kid to a park today. And then it's a really good looking kid. I don't know where they got him, but I think he's got a bright future. The next one is appreciate the friend who removes invasive plants from our parks. And this one features our very own Andrew Clark and was picked up and retweeted by national NRPA and got a lot of traction, particularly on Instagram. So I just want to show you a little bit what you're doing. It's important that we are part of a larger network. And in addition to using our digital networks to promote our programs and say, hey, this park is closed and sign up for a nature camp, you've got to be engaging so that you can build that large engaged audiences so that when we do need to tell people about things, it's there. And this is a part of that work. So I really want to give a shout out to our team, Kelly Pillar and Sarah Moskovitz as well, have been working on that. And I just want to flag a couple of important events coming up for you, which you probably already have placeholders for, but the Hats Off Luncheon through our tremendous partners at the foundation is back this year in person. That is slated for October 7th down at Smale Park. We also, with our friends at the foundation, have the 5th annual Ez Fest in Laurel Park on October 1st, Saturday, October 1st. Commissioner Thomas has been involved as a member of the planning committee with us. This will also serve as the official rollout and dedication of the new Ezra Charles statue project. And will be a very large public community event. It's going to include students, members of the Ezra Charles family are coming in, neighborhood organizations. We're sure we're going to have probably the mayor and or council members will be there. So you can mark your calendars for that. It's going to run roughly from 10 to 2, maybe 10 to 3. We're still nailing down the details, and the program is probably going to happen sometime in that first hour, which will be bands, music playing. There's an essay contest for the kids to have the opportunity to share their essay, which shares the legacy of Ezra Charles. So that should be a lot of fun. And as Joel mentioned, they're wrapping up work on the pickleball courts, and tentatively on August 12th at 10:30 down at Sawyer Point, we're going to have an official ribbon cutting for the new pickleball courts, along with Gary and the team. And you guys will be, getting more information about that, but I just wanted to let you know so you're penciled in. And then finally, I'd like to give a sincere thank you and shout out to the Fernbank Garden Club, which quite possibly might be our oldest CPAC. They are having an ice cream social to celebrate 100 years of service to the city and to Cincinnati parks. At Sailor Park on July 30th. And, a lot of these groups that we have and interact with, they just do their thing. They go to work every year. They have their events. They work to promote our parks and our places. And we don't hear much from them. But it's important to know that they're there. And in this case, they've been doing it for 100 years. That's all I have.
already. Next, Jenny has been really excited for this next presentation. She's going to talk a little bit about our vote project.
It's my very favorite subject, as you all know.
I didn't realize this was on the agenda. I thought I was gonna be downtown right now.
To go hopefully very quickly. This is my update, Will. We have been in contact with the Army Corps of Engineers that has certainly provided us guidance and resources on how to obtain a permit for the boat dock. The past permit did expire in 2018, and contrary to what may have been said in the past, we do have to submit a new application in order to get a permit, or at least apply for a permit for this area. The application has been initialized, and Law and Parks are gathering the remaining information in order to complete this application. Some of these items in order to complete the application include a geotechnical study, a full description and drawings of the project. We have, or I plan to submit the past geotechnical study that we have received from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. They were so gracious to do some research for us and get the past permit that came out in 2012. I will submit this with the application, the final application, to see if there's a need to do a new geotechnical, or if that shows that the area or the soils are not conducive to mussels growing in the area. So a geotechnical study would include soil samples as well as looking for a mussel study as well. So we could submit it and they say it's not conducive, you don't have to go any further with that. Or they could say, no, sorry, you have to resubmit and get another geotechnical study that's more current than 2012. Law is actively working with Parks and Hafner to gather the necessary pieces in order to create preliminary documents in order to allow us to get to this permitting process. As I mentioned prior, there needs to be a full description as well as drawings that are submitted with this application in order to get a permit. In order to get those drawings, I need some kind of contractual agreement to work with Hafner to allow us to get those drawings. So we have been working with Law. Law is working with Hafner, and we're getting that all sorted out. And as we continue to make progress, we will certainly keep you updated on where we are and the next steps.
Jenny, remind me, we had funds that were received from the state of Ohio Natural Resources, for this boat dock. Is there any risk of that funding expiring?
Actually, from my understanding, we provided those funds back, and what we have left are what the city and the parks matches.
Oh,
We don't have those funds anymore.
So those funds that are sitting in a restricted account may be spent.
Correct.
And we approved that project before construction prices have effectively doubled. So what is the chance of us getting another sheet like this in a year that says this boat dock cost is doubled and
The RFP went out with the understanding that our budget for this was 1.7. However, it was not determined at that point how much of the 1.7 we would need to retain in order to bring the electric services and the utility services to the boat, which is what Parks has agreed as their responsibility. And the remaining responsibility was on Hafner to then use those dollars for construction.
I think it should be taken back that the feasibility of this project has to be examined. We in the building business right now dropped many projects this year because they are no longer feasible based on construction prices. So what I just want to be cognizant of is real reality. And if we've got a feasibility issue, that we address it by discussing where additional funding comes from, whether that's Hafner or otherwise, or whether this is a project that's in limbo. We really have to have the reality check of that significant project that was approved under the.
Primary risk is that Hafner will be able to afford if costs increase.
Right.
So it's evaluating if, and knowing that he's spent some money and done some acquisitions of things already. Just need to make sure that he still actively thinks it's viable from his standpoint.
We're receiving no indications from any material providers that there's any sight on construction prices decrease.
Yes. I will make sure that when we, are engaging with Hafner, Kevin Frank is certainly on this call, and he has been reaching out to Hafner to have those discussions, or futures or past discussions. So in the future, I will make sure we are including this as the feasibility and have that full discussion to understand where we are, and that may determine our next path or next step as well.
And we talked about when we approved this that we wanted to continue to have some visibility into the materials and design of the project. Again, I just want to make sure that we don't get a project that's value engineered to the point that it's not something we're proud of.
Understood. This, the drawings that would need to go in for the permitting process would not necessarily be full design. That would still have to come to you as well. But this initial piece is just understanding what, if anything, needs to be embedded into the riverbank so that they can make the determination if they would provide a permit for us. But I do know that you would like to be able to see the full design and have input on if that's acceptable or not.
Great, thank you.
Right. I'm gonna sit down.
So it's when we start. Just want to give you a brief update on the Power Seal project that is moving forward. Actually, next step is a survey. It's non-invasive. We're not going to be cutting down anything. Basically, it's about a 1 acre site that we're trying to really determine the boundaries of this. Law is drafting a right of entry now that kind of puts the parameters of the project and scopes out that particular work. So Crystal's here if you got any additional questions, but we are moving forward with that next phase, which is that survey.
Is that part of what is funded by Pricefield Will, or is that?
Yes, and then what we're hoping from that survey, there'll be basically a report that gives us information on what are the next steps that we need to do. How would we be, it's a map of really what their survey actually determined was there. And then basically a professional assessment of the preservation of the cemetery from there. So we're looking to get those 3 pieces of information from the survey and the report.
And when do you expect that will be done?
Summer of 22. So hopefully that when the right of entry gets done, I think the team is ready to go and the third party is ready to go. So hopefully within the next couple of months, we'll see that activity take place. I had a meeting this week at Stanbury Park to go over the project there with Cora. Mr. Linder was there as well. Really the goal of that meeting was just to get all the parties on the same page. We're looking from a support letter or approval letter from the Mount Washington Community Council that they're in favor of this project and that they want to move forward. It seems like everyone is in favor of the project. One of the things we want to ensure though is our team is involved in every step of the way. Our responsibilities of stewards of the land is to make sure that the work that we're doing now is sustainable for many generations to come. And so we've stressed that we want our team involved from the very beginning as that route is determined and as the project continues on. So that was the goal of the meeting, again, just to get everyone on the same page and make sure that our message is consistent and uniform between all parties. Some of the parties are not in tune or informed as well as some others. And so there'll be some time for those groups to work together to make sure they're all on the same page so that we're not the referee in that particular situation. The wolf statue that was stolen out of Eden Park. I met with the sons and daughters of Italy last week. It's great food, by the way, if you're interested. But they're really energetic group, really looking forward to helping us solve the replacement of this statue. They've done some great historical background work. They're determined that there are 7 other statues in the United States. There's some variation between the statues, so there's not one particular mold. The next thing that we're trying to work on is we're going to get some local artists together to determine what do we anticipate the cost of this replacement to be. From there, we're going to work with the foundation. I've already talked with Jennifer. She's willing to host a meeting with this group to figure out what this campaign looks like and how folks can contribute to the replacement of the statue. But just a great group of guys really excited to help. They've already got a list of some prominent Italian Americans in town who are willing to contribute to the project, replacement project. So one thing that we did learn was all these other statues are on very high pedestals. You really can't get to them the way that the one in Eden Park was. So I think that that's something we're going to need to look moving forward, is how is it displayed? Obviously, security and is going to be, and lighting will be part of that. So as that, again, that project progresses, we'll give you updates, but that next step is determining what we believe that cost to be, and then setting up that funding campaign through the foundation to replace it. Went to the Westwood Door kickoff on July 13th. Very, very well attended. The park looked great. Want to give a shout out to Lou Sand and his team who provided the sound for the event and was there on site the entire time. The location really looked good. Great turnout. Several council members was there as well. So just a great thing for Westwood moving forward. Very excited about what that can be. Upcoming, we have the Deer Management Program, which I think a lot of you are familiar with. Given the fact that we've got a new administration, new council members, and new mayor, we thought we would get in front of that. Rocky has already prepared a memo to send across the street to let them know about the program, what its benefits are, so they're not caught off guard by letters coming in or concerns. So just want to let you know that we're sending that correspondence to administration and to the new council members so that they don't, again, have some familiarity with what we're trying to do and why.
Sure, copy of this.
Yes, it will be. We talked a little about the Inwood basketball court relocation. I'll get with CRC to make sure that that moves quickly as we possibly can. Rocky talked about the Ezra Charles dedication. Again, a really energetic group. So many different folks are bringing so many different things to the event. Really, I hope everyone can make it there. It's going to be really special. The family will be in town, as you know, for the dedication as well. We're working through some last minute construction issues, but I think we've kind of worked through most of them now, and we hope to keep our timeline. But if we don't, we'll give you an update in August. There was a comment at the last meeting about the green space in Mount Adams. I think it's on the corner of Martin, correct? It was Miss Miller. Jennifer Spicer and I met with her. Obviously, they're looking for some help securing that property. Kind of explained that right now in its current state, it really has no benefit to the park itself, but suggested that they try to figure out what they want to do there, something unique if possible, and then try to see if there's some grant or opportunities to kind of help with facilitate that vision to make it what they want it to be. So they're going to go back and determine or try to get some ideas of what they could put there, and then try to reach out to some organizations that may be able to help them secure that property and again, fulfill that vision.
Did they ask anything about our assistance in keeping the grass cut?
Yeah, they did. Right now, they're actually keeping up with it. Our East maintenance crew has helped, I think, one time or two. So we're trying to help as best we can. Obviously, it's tricky going on to off-city property, but we don't want anybody out there, getting hurt. I think there was an older gentleman that was trying to help as well. So we definitely will be great neighbors and try to keep that area looking as well as we can. But I think they're keeping up with it right now.
Yeah, I was by there one day and it was one down.
Yeah.
And a little residential fisher.
Yes, and it was a lot.
I would like to add or consider adding an agenda item, which would be our program highlight. There's so many good things going out there. So many good folks in the Parks Department who are passionate about what they do and are very skilled at what they do. Want to see if you would entertain the idea of having just a short 5-minute program in each meeting that really highlights not only what they're doing, but who's doing it. I think it's really important that we connect our staff with the board so that you really see what is happening in some of these programs and see how much passion is out there from our staff to deliver these programs. So just something I would ask you to consider amongst yourself and see if you would be open to that. Obviously, we're trying to keep the meetings moving as quickly as we can, but again, just I think it's a good way of tying the work that we're doing with the board. They want to present as well, so I think it's a good idea to move forward. The last one may take a little bit more time. One of the things that we're discussing internally is, this Burnett Dog Park has been on the table since I think 2014. Obviously, there's some concerns about parking and environmental and just some very passionate folks that are against it, but there's a lot of passionate folks that are for the project as well. So one of the things that we like to kind of consider is maybe a temporary dog park. The purpose of this would be actually get some feedback on some of the concerns that we had. We would put some devices in place for some feedback, either on site or through online, just to kind of gauge, is this really a good location? Would this really work here? What are the concerns that may happen? Obviously, Joel has a lot to do right now. We don't want to put a lot of cost into something that's temporary. So what we're going to do is just kind of dig a little bit deeper to find out if this is even feasible to do. We'll come back in August and kind of give you some information of what we found on cost, how quickly we can do it, what it may look like. But again, it's not a very high priority for us right now, but it's obviously a very hot topic in the community. I did attend the pop-up dog park event a few weeks back, and it was really good to see what they were doing. But what I walked away from mostly was just a sense of community. So many people that were walking by, just looking at it with their young children and just trying to interact as best they could through the fencing, and just seeing college students in there who have pets and dogs at home, but obviously can't have them at college, but we're just sitting there and enjoying the companionship of pets. And so that kind of seems what we're really about. And I think these dog parks provide that opportunity. And so again, very preliminary, we're just kind of digging into it right now. But I'd like to come back in August to find out, to tell you what we found out about the feasibility of this, and whether it's even something Joel and his team can take on right now, or is it, is there another means to try to figure out, is this a good location? Is this the kind of dog park we want to operate? So just something to think about. Again, I know it's very controversial, but it just seems like it's been sitting there for a long, long time without anything going on. I have mentioned it to Jason. He seems interested in pursuing it as well. But again, we just need more information to move forward. That's all I have.
I will give you some feedback on the dog park. I think you're looking for some.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about this. What I said to Steve was, this has gotten so much attention, and from my perspective, it's a bit of a moot point right now, because we did act on this. Just to remind everyone where we were, we said as a board, we're supportive of a dog park in this location. We're earmarking $150,000 for what we believe was a $300,000 project. And we want to see some engagement, really fundraising from the community to match that. I know that there's been some discussion that the community can't do fundraising until we, $5,000 drawing, which is taking an inordinate amount of time. I do challenge, we've got some fundraising can be done without that. And we haven't gotten any input from the community on where things stand with fundraising efforts. What I don't want is for this board to have to spend more time talking about what it's already spent a lot of time talking about, and staff spending a lot of time working on something unless we know we have a funding end game, which is that there's a match from the community in place. That's kind of that's my first thinking on it. My second thinking is, if we go the route of doing temporary something, definitely it has to be inexpensive, because that just digs into what we ultimately want to spend on a dog park. Just to do fencing around a 10,000 square foot area is not cheap. And I just draw some caution around doing something that is introduced in a half-baked format, because it has the potential to set it up for failure, because it becomes a mess of the ground, and it opens us up, I think, for criticisms of something that is unique to a temporary space. the quality of the fencing, the quality of the improvements is poor. And I think, that's not what we're hoping to achieve with the temporary dog park. If there are legitimate criticisms of it, oh, good, okay. What I think the temporary dog park seeks to allay are concerns that, at least I believe, won't play out as real problems.
Right.
Parking, noise, these type of things. So, you've got to make it clear, this is temporary, this is what the real thing's gonna look like, this is I don't know. I caution that we may not achieve what we seek to in it.
And I think there's some operational challenges. Obviously, it's going to be messy sometime of the year, and that's concerned as well, how it may look at times. And all those concerns we're looking at as well.
And I know the community has engaged with professional fundraisers to talk about logistics and how to do it. And they've also received a list of grant opportunities that they are willing to move forward. And because it's taken so many months to get anything from us on a diagram, they are also commissioning out of their own funds diagrams that they could use to be able to go out and do some fundraising. So I know they're very committed to doing the fundraising necessary for it.
That's great. We have talked about community input, we've gotten a lot. In fact, I think Rocky, you said we have never received more input on a project than this dog park in Clifton generally.
Well, specifically, I was referring to the survey that was done. Yeah, it's the highest, by far, highest survey we've ever got.
Yeah, I would just challenge us, as we said, this has been a topic of discussion starting in 2014 when the community took it to the city as part of the community budgeting process. So this is a project of life for Vernon Woods. So I'm just challenged, how do we get some project from beginning to end? And that's my level of frustration that we said now over a year ago that this is something we would be interested in doing. And for lack of somebody internally, other than any board members being committed to it, there's been no further, well, there has been since Joel's been here, there's been some design work done by nature that we just need.
Can we get some feedback, some feedback, some formal indication of where things are on fundraising from the community, so it can inform us on next steps to take?
Yeah, no, they haven't officially started fundraising. They do have, I don't know that they've raised, they may have raised some money, but they haven't been actively, they're waiting for a design drawing that they could use to put out. And say it's easy to do, and that's where they finally have now said, okay, we're gonna spend our own money and get something done, rather than waiting for us to give them something.
For me, when I heard about the prospect of a test run, I thought, that's a great idea. Because my impression was we are stuck, and how do we get unstuck? By addressing or getting some data on what people perceive to be issues. And the other part of it for me was, while it sounds like we got a lot of feedback on this, it's in my head all over the place. So I couldn't come to, there's really strong, significant opposition to this or positive people on this. So I was hearing, this is great. We can figure this out with some real data. So I wasn't recalling, and I appreciate you bringing it up, that we did vote and said, yes, we're gonna do it here. And the next step is figuring out the funding gap. The stuck place was, in order for the community to figure out the funding, they needed the design, and we didn't have that. So I still think there is an audible opposition to this project. We continue to have people say, I never heard of it, or people living immediately adjacent to it saying this is not a good idea. So I just think we need to figure out exactly where we are. Where is that? If we look at the input that we've got, what do the data say about where we are in terms of proponents and opposition? And how do we get unstuck? So that's what I was hearing you say, a way to get unstuck. Because in my previous life, that's exactly the way we did it. So that's why it sounded like a good idea.
I'm biased because I'm here in the neighborhood so from the standpoint of the people who are advocates for, they continue to do their pop-up, they're getting that word out. They've gone, as I said, they have participated with Human Nature on looking at initial designs for this. They've given feedback, they've been waiting for drawing to come back, and now they've decided out of their own funds, they pay to have something done. So they've contacted professional fundraisers, they're looking at grant opportunities. So, and we have collected data, we have gotten data from 3CDC on the list of things that the people in the building have listed as objections. We do have data from 3CDC on Washington Park addressing those specific things, like how much parking do you really need? How much noise is there? How much waste is really flowing down the streets on that? So we've gotten some real data. They have also even requested of the park board, here's the dates of the next 3 community councils at Clifton, Coreyville, and Cuff. Please get us on those agendas. So they're pushing, and I feel like on our side here, it's like, so are we doing our part? That's what's frustrating to me.
So how do we pull all of that together in a way that we can communicate to the community that yes, we've looked at this thoroughly. We voted that we're going to do this. We are addressing the concerns and the opposition that has come up with that kind of feedback. How do we get all that together? So then we're in a place where if the community is saying what's what will allow us to do the fundraising to close the gap is the design, and they're willing to do that, then it seems like we've got all the pieces, but they're just not pulled together in a way that we've got a cohesive story that we can go out to the community.
And that's where I know that an email came into the park board in June saying, here's the dates we'd like to get in front of CTM, Coreyville, Cuff. They've said we would like to do a community meeting at Trailside this day. So they're pushing, and we've had conversations with them because it shouldn't be just those people, it's a park project, so it should be parks. So either we're going to take the lead and push this, or we're not. And that's where this is frustrating. How do we get a project? I know, and in talking with Jason, he's very interested in moving forward with this project. I even had said, walking in, since there's pro and con, is this a project you want to deal with, or should we push to deal with this before you get? He's very interested and willing to be the front guy and move forward with this. So I think we just have to get in front. We need to do what they've asked us to do. Get them drawing, get us on the agenda at CTM, Cuff, and Coreyville, and put a date on the calendar for a public meeting in Burnt Woods. That moves it forward. At those meetings, we can give them the data that would answer some of the fears that have been expressed. And it just moves it forward. Now, initially, I liked the concept of temporary dog park just because it would show that some of the things that they are concerned about, meaning parking, et cetera, just are not, will probably not play out to be concerns. But we just have to, but I'm concerned about doing a half-assed job, not putting something temporary in, when we could be moving forward on the fine.
And I just too want to caution, we're never going to reach a place on this where it's like
Everybody's happy.
politics. Everybody's happy,
Not gonna
everybody
happen.
comes to the same
Not gonna
side.
happen. So there's gonna be,
I do have a lot of confidence that when this is well-designed and well-constructed and managed properly with community support, that it's going to be a huge asset to a very large neighborhood and also attract people to Burnout Woods, to the park, to the business district. And I think it's great. I think it's really great. And I think that, 3CBC has faced this with almost every project, definitely every public project that they've done. And we do have to navigate addressing concerns, listening to the concerns. And I think we can do that well and effectively. I really do. I haven't seen a concern that's been written in any of these letters that isn't something that can be mitigated or addressed. I haven't.
If you don't have enough parking, we can always cut down some trees in Burnet Woods and build a big parking lot to accommodate.
It
I'm
won't be
just kidding.
necessary.
So there's
It won't be necessary.
So we'll give it back to you guys to say, you're hearing us. It's not one commissioner. It's been since 2014.
So we will work toward we will be at those meetings. We will provide the feedback and the data that we have. And we will work toward a rendering of the dog park, because that's going to get them over what they need to fundraise.
That's what they've told us.
I have a question, I guess, just because I'm confused on some of this, the human nature stuff, there was a $5,000 fund commission for that, is that correct?
Yeah.
Commissioner, I believe that's been completed, I'm not sure what else they owe us, but if my office's fault that we haven't moved this forward, I'm happy to prioritize this however you want us to.
Yeah.
I've not done any more drawing ourselves, I feel like human nature met what we asked them for under that, but if there's additional drawings we need to get, then please let me know so that we can.
Yeah, let's circle back then, because I know one of the things that they've said is to be able to present in these meetings, what Human Nature did in the revised that they came back with is good. It's sort of done in a vacuum, so to speak, where you don't see the perspective of that park in its exact setting.
Okay.
That's the one piece that it looks beautiful as it got designed, but there's no perspective as far as it's sitting, where it sits in that park. So I think that's the one piece that's missing. And then if we could probably do this internally, one of the other points that they have asked for is, as they go to the community councils, a graphic of Burnet Woods, which we've got a gazillion of them, with a drawing of the park, which will be less than 1% of the park, so that they can show perspective that this isn't developing Burnet Woods. So those are the only two pieces: the perspective of it as it sits, and then just perspective of where it size compared to the whole park.
I think it would be helpful to show the proximity to the neighboring Parkside community. We've received,
Right.
A long list of signatures from those neighbors. I walked all around there. There is a significant green space between this proposed park and the Parkside condo community, including trails in and out of Burnet Woods, including significant tree density buffer between this, I think it's a 9,000 square foot proposed dog park and the Parkside condos. So again, from the significant complaints we've received, I can, in my reasonable estimation, see, I can see all the ways that we can mitigate concerns around this. So I think that, again, that proximity would, that perspective will be very helpful.
I think the other thing, to get some rough idea of the cost of a temporary approach to it, to Molly's point, that's just sucking funds from permanent solutions. So I mean, if it's a little bit, maybe, yeah, but if it's a significant amount, that's gonna sway my point.
Well, the reason I thought, the reason I thought the temporary was a good idea was because I thought there were holes in our understanding. As I listened to the discussion, it really doesn't seem to be. It seems like it hasn't all been pulled together in a cohesive manner, so we can have a story that we can present to the various community councils. And as you say, not everybody's gonna be happy about anything, but as long as we have looked at the data and we are confident in the decision we're making and the proposal we're making, then I'm good.
Well, I know Jason wanted to be involved in this project and be part of that community engagement. Would it be asking too much if we held that off, that community engagement that they're planning for those 3 communities until September? Because I think that gives us some more time to have a
Yeah,
drawing.
as long as we can get these designs, because they're ready to go start doing fundraising.
And most community councils are working on this, most of them, anyway. So the earliest we'd be able to get back would be September.
All right, we'll shoot for that then.
You asked me, it's very straightforward. So you're saying if the community comes up with their match to fund this, the commissioners will approve the dog park construction. And my answer to you was, yes, I'm pretty sure that's what we've already
Agreed
agreed
to.
on a long time ago. And you're hearing affirmation of that, I think, here.
That was the next recommendation for me.
Well, again, the goal is just to, again, move it forward. That
That's
was-
right.
yeah.
We're excited for that.
Okay.
We're excited for that.
Okay, so
That's it.
I'm gonna open up any input from questions, comments from the commissioners.
I have a question.
There were a
Yes,
lot of
sir.
them.
So, I'm not sure who, if anybody can answer this yet, but I'm sure, confident that by next meeting, we'll have an answer. When someone is mowing the yard, there's honeybees all in the clover that you're cutting. What happens to the honeybees when the mower runs over them?
Don't fly away.
I will provide an answer for you by the next meeting.
I'm just curious, I got a lot of
I
clover in my.
am sure there are a different variety of things that could happen to a honeybee that just run over my own.
I'm just curious
And
as to
I will
what the
make sure.
mortality rate is of the honeybee. How many survive when I run over them? Or should I just mow late at night or early in the morning?
I'm gonna
Should let the
give
clover
signs in
grow.
your yard.
You should let the clover grow. That's what trying to do.
Food, not lawns, Brett.
Huh?
Food, not lawns.
Yeah,
The sign, you need a sign.
yeah. It's bee food, right?
That's right.
I will see if I can. do
Okay, yeah,
something that
I'm curious.
really-
They come to my yard and, my yard.
I would suspect the honeybee would move where the mower got.
Oh, well, I'm gonna do it. I'll slow down.
Slower one.
My initial
Then it
response.
turns into a 3-hour job instead of an hour and a half.
But I don't know if there's data out there that will say
I-
how
and there-
many
there may not
honeybees actually get
I-
stuck.
That's,
I will
that
see
would
what I
be the most
can find.
interesting thing, to see if somebody's even studied that.
No parking sign, like they say street sweeper. In my grass.
And I have to say, that is a new one for me.
Anything else?
I would.
Don't spend any time on that one.
Two things. One is, I really like the idea of the highlight of activities in the park. It's good for us and also for the 13 people who listen to the meeting. They'll know. So I think that's a really good idea, and I'd be willing to take the time to do that. And I also wanted to, in that vein, give a shout out to Lusanne, who's been doing exactly that. And one of the activations has been in the Martin Luther King Park in Avondale. And there are 3 planned activities there. One happened in June, another is planned for July, and then another in August. There was some security, not security, but some unfortunate happenings at the very end of that. And I know for the July event, it has already happened, and I saw a note saying that the police response and the security provided for that event was very good. They had a good experience. I was out of town and couldn't make it, but those are the kinds of things that I think it's important for us to highlight and for people to know about. So good job on doing those things that we was here to give us a detail on in our last meeting, I think, but many of them were out in the future. So just to get reminded of that, I think will be a good idea. So thank you.
Sure. Anything else? Hearing nothing else, we will stand adjourned.